The story begins in the city of Nanzhou in Sichuan province, and all the most interesting events in this country unfolded there. All the people in the city of Nanzhou were minding their own business and everything was fine and everyone was happy and didn't even think about anything bad. But at that moment, when no one expected this, thunder and lightning struck in the sky, although the weather was good and very sunny. Lightning struck straight into the roof of a tall building, and the strike of this lightning continued for a long time and did not stop, and it was strange. People looked at this phenomenon and did not understand what was happening now because they had never seen such an unusual lightning before. And then, when the lightning stopped striking from the roof of the building, the silhouette of a man appeared to everyone, but they could not yet see his face. And at that very second the strange stranger waved his hand and began to come to his senses over time and realize what was happening there now. The man looked around and couldn't understand how he got there, and everything seemed very strange to him and he wanted more information. The man looked at Nanzhou from the roof and thought and could not understand if he had really returned back and how this was possible in life. The man began to remember how his sister helped him in everything, and even when he was injured, she always took care of him to the end. The girl was treating her brother's wound and asked him who he fought with again, and these people needed to be punished for such cruelty. The girl told her brother that it was terrible and she didn't want her brother to be beaten because she loved him very much and was worried about him. He remembered that he and his sister Zhang Ziyu had always supported each other from a young age until that chance meeting 8 years ago. He was returning home, but suddenly a strange old man stopped him and said that he clearly saw that his bones were excellent and incredible. The old man told the guy that this was a very rare talent and said that he had one treasure and asked if he was interested in this rare thing. He refused the old man's offer, but the old man at that very second opened the box and there appeared a bright glow emanating from the thing. The guy fell to the ground and was in shock because he didn't know that it was standing in front of him, because a strange creature immediately appeared from this box. The creature from the box stood in front of him and he remembered that it was this accident that completely changed his human life. He remembered that then he opened the gate leading to another world, and after that his life was never the same and just as good. In another world, a guy fought with terrible monsters and then began to upgrade his fighting skills to survive in this world. He recalled that this bloody struggle with monsters lasted 8,000 years and he saw many kinds of monsters there. In the end, having achieved great respect, he simply met with immense emptiness and loneliness, and he was sorry. Thoughts about the person dear to him who remained on earth did not leave his head at all, and he could not forget about his beloved and sweet sister. And finally he found an unusual way to overcome time and space and told his sister that he was returning back to earth. And at the moment he was walking around the city of Nanzhou and planning his future plans to meet his sister as soon as possible. All the people filmed him on the phone and thought that he was some kind of not very adequate person, but he didn't care about the opinions of others. A man was walking along the road, and at that very second a car appeared on the road in front of him and started honking for him to get off the road. The man looked at the driver and was very angry that he was so disrespectful to him, and the driver continued to honk and shout. But the driver clearly did not expect such a reaction, and the man swung his hand and stood in a fighting pose in front of the car and wanted to hit it with all his might. The man immediately hit the hood of the car and thought that now this man would no longer honk and raise his voice at all people. The driver got angry and asked the man if he had gone crazy and why he stood in the middle of the road and if he really wanted to die now. But then suddenly the driver stopped screaming and just stood silently and looked at the man, and it seemed like he remembered something from his head. The driver told the man that he reminded him of someone and asked if it was Zhang Ziling, and he couldn't believe his eyes now. Zhang Ziling also remembered this person and realized that it was Jiang Jingsheng, and he was his classmate when he was a child in middle school. Zhang Ziling remembered that Jiang Jingsheng always competed with him because of his gloomy appearance in middle school and hated him. Jiang Jingsheng asked if Zhang really didn't recognize him and how many years they had not seen each other, and if he was actually doing cosplay by dressing like that. The passenger sitting next to Jiang Jingsheng took off her glasses and she, too, opened the door and went out to Zhang Ziling, because she also recognized him. The girl said good afternoon to Zhang Ziling and said that they had not seen each other for a long time and she wanted to know how he was doing and his health. Zhang Ziling realized that this was Tang Yu, his first school love, and if he had not crossed the line, perhaps they would have gotten married later. Zhang Ziling was happy to see his old friend and asked Tang Yu if she was also there, and he was glad to see the person dear to him. Zhang Xiling asked Tang Yu if she knew where her sister was now, and he wanted to see her because he missed her very much. Jiang Jingsheng told Zhang that he had asked the wrong person, and even though this area had moved with demolition, he did not know where his sister was. But Jiang Jingsheng told Zhang Xiling that he heard that his sister was taken by some rich family and therefore she should be happy. Jiang Jingsheng looked at Zhang Xiling and said that if we assume now, she lives much better than her brother. Jiang Jingsheng said that in the past, when they moved due to demolition, they did not find him and his sister and they did not receive compensation for it. Jiang Jingsheng took money out of the car and asked Zhang Xiling to take it and open a business, because not now he looked like a homeless beggar. Zhang Xiling looked at the money and thought that he had missed so many important events and did not even know where he could look for his sister and how to find him. Zhang Xiling looked at his first high school crush and began to remember his past years when everything was very good for him. Tang Yu also looked at Zhang Xiling without taking her eyes off her, and she also wanted to go back to the times when she did not have any problems. Tang Yu said goodbye to Zhang Xiling and got back into the car, while Jiang Jingsheng stood with money in his hands and waited for his friend's answer. Zhang Xiling took the money from Jiang Jingsheng and told him thank you because he didn't have any money and now he could spend it somewhere. Tang Yu told Zhang Xiling that in 5 days at the Jiangzhou Chui restaurant, their group is organizing a high school reunion. Tang Yu asked Zhang Xiling if he could come and sit there, and he said that if he had free time he would come there. Jiang Jingsheng told Zhang Xiling that if he doesn't have enough money, he can come to him because he needs a fast-cleaning lady like him. Jiang Jingsheng started laughing loudly and immediately drove away at high speed from there, and Zhang Xiling held the money in his hand and was happy. Zhang Xiling immediately put this money in his magic ring and thought that it was good that he met Jiang because he needed money. Zhang Xiling thought that now he needed to find an apartment and also a change of clothes and think about a plan of action and further activities. Xiling thought that he did not expect that this heavenly storm would not only make his spiritual strength weak, but also break the ring barrier. Zhang thought that he didn't care that he had lost this magic stone and medicine and the magic vessel and 6 artifacts too. Zhang Xiling realized that he would need to take the time to find them without delay because they were very important to him. After this, Zhang Xiling decided to come to the suburban area of the Xingfu residential complex to find an apartment for himself in this area. The woman turned on the light and showed Zhang Xiling his apartment and said that this brother came to the address and there are better apartments there. The woman said that there were 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom and a living room, and the value for money was simply an incredible miracle. The woman said that the apartment had furniture and besides, the annual rent was on preferential terms, and this is only true for her. Zhang Xiling told the woman that it was a good apartment and he would live with us for now until he later became rich. Zhang Xiling thought that he could finally rest, and since he returned he decided to take a bath and relax a little in the bath. Zhang Xiling filled the bathroom and thought that he had found a good apartment, but it still could not replace his real home. Zhang Xiling put a couple of toys in the bathroom to remember the time when he was young and loved to play outside with his friends. Zhang Xiling realized that he felt very good, but be that as it may, his spiritual power on earth was too weak and it was stressful. Zhang Xiling realized that recovery was very slow and yet he needed to think about other ways and adapt there. But at that moment Zhang Xiling heard that someone opened the front door and he was surprised and thought who came because he was not expecting anyone. Some girl who could barely stand on her feet came into the house and he hardly opened the front door and seemed to be very drunk now. The girl said that Benben Shao could still drink, and she leaned against the wall to avoid falling and said all sorts of unrelated nonsense. The girl took off her shoes and thought that she needed to take a bath to relieve stress and recover after a hard day and then go to bed. The girl opened the door to the bathroom and thought that it's good that there was no one in this room and she alone could do whatever she wanted. But when she entered the bathroom, the girl froze in place in surprise because she saw a stranger there and did not understand how he appeared there. Zhang Xiling also looked at this girl and was silent because he didn't know what he could tell her and didn't understand why she came into his apartment. Zhang Xiling continued to look at the girl for a couple of minutes and first of all wanted to get explanatory information from her. But the girl looked at Zhang Xiling and didn't say anything because she thought that he was a dangerous person and he could harm her now. But then suddenly the girl started screaming with all her might and calling people to help her and told Zhang Xiling not to come near her. The girl's screams could be heard throughout the house, and she said that there was a bandit in the house who could kill her, and she was very afraid of this man. A couple of minutes later, Zhang Xiling was sitting on the sofa and thought that it was unfair because he received a slap in the face from this stranger. Zhang Xiling was sitting on the sofa next to this girl and asked her if it was really necessary to hit him so hard and hurt him. The girl told Sister Qian that she warned her that she would pay the rent later, and how could she now rent out the apartment to someone else. The girl continued to talk on the phone with Sister Qian and wanted her to understand her situation, and she would definitely pay the rent. Zhang Xiling looked at her and thought that if she were not a girl, he would have hit her right back after she hit her and knocked her out. The girl was very upset and said why things always don't go according to plan and how Sister Qian could treat her so dishonestly. Zhang Xiling asked the girl what happened to her and was there really arrears in rent and the tenant gave up her apartment. The girl said that due to some reason she owed payment for several months and who knew that the owner would rent out the house. Zhang Xiling said that he would stop discussing this problem and said that he was giving her the evening to pack her things and get out of there quickly. The girl said that she doesn't have a penny and maybe they'll come to an agreement and he'll let her live there for a while until she earns money. Zhang Xiling said that now he was the owner and rented the apartment, and why on earth should he allow her to live in this apartment of his. The girl began to think what to answer to Zhang Xiling so that he would still allow her to stay in the apartment and not kick her out into the street at night. The girl came up with an idea and told Zhang Xiling that she could become his housekeeper for a while and work to pay the rent. Zhang Xiling imagined her as a housekeeper and he really liked it and thought it was a good idea for a job. Zhang Xiling told the girl what he would think, and after a couple of seconds he told her that it was great and that it could suit him quite well. Zhang Xiling told the girl that then they agreed, and from tomorrow all responsibilities for washing, cleaning, cooking and ironing will fall on her. Zhang Xiling thought that after all, you can't throw away such free services and you always need to charge people for everything. After that, at midnight, Zhang Xiling sat in his room and began to train his skills so as not to forget the old techniques in the world. Zhang Xiling sat in his bed and was filled with energy, and blue waves began to appear around his body and he relaxed and thought. But at that moment, something distracted Zhang Xiling's attention and he began to hear some sounds in the next room and wondered what it was. Zhang Xiling immediately jumped out of the room and shouted at the girl and asked what she was doing in the middle of the night and disturbing her neighbor. But Zhang Xiling saw that someone covered the girl's mouth with tape and tied her up, and she could not move or speak and only made noise. Zhang Xiling was shocked because he saw that some men at his house had tied up a girl and wanted to drag her away at night without making noise. Zhang Xiling wondered if it was a kidnapping and these people broke into his house so brazenly, and what could this girl do to them. The man looked at his friend who was holding the girl and they realized that they did not need witnesses and they had to deal with him. And at that very second the man ran towards Zhang Xiling and wanted to hit him, and he was armed, but Xiling had no weapons. But as soon as the bandit approached him, Zhang Xiling struck the enemy with a strong kick in the stomach, and the bandit clearly did not expect this from him. The bandit flew to the side from such a blow and landed next to his friend, and they realized that Zhang Xiling was not an ordinary type. The bandit saw Zhang Xiling hit his friend and said that he did not expect him to be so capable and he was a very strong fighter. And then the second bandit took out his knife and told Zhang Xiling that now he would regret that he was born into this world and he would torture him. The bandit quickly ran towards Zhang Xiling and swung his knife to once and for all and quickly put an end to the insolent fighter. The bandit stabbed Zhang Xiling with a knife, but suddenly Zhang grabbed his knife with 2 fingers and did not feel any danger from him. Zhang Xiling continued to hold the bandit's knife with his fingers and he did not understand how this was possible and who this stranger fighter was. The bandit looked at Zhang Xiling and now did not know what he could do with such a fighter because his attacks were powerless against such a fighter. And at that very second, Zhang Xiling's eyes began to glow and the bandit got scared and thought that he was definitely not a person but a creature. And then Zhang Xiling exhaled and splashed out all his energy, and the bandit felt all his power and flew far away somewhere to the side. The bandit dropped the girl from his hands and she began to fall, and Zhang Xiling realized that he had to save her quickly, otherwise she would hit the floor. Zhang Xiling jumped out with all his might and grabbed the girl tightly and prevented her from getting seriously injured when she collided with the hard floor. Zhang Xiling was glad that in this world he did not lose his speed and he was also fast and could save all the people from such situations. Zhang Xiling landed on the floor and thought how these bandits could be related to his housekeeper, and he wanted to know the whole truth. But turning around, Zhang Xiling did not notice the bandits on the floor, and it was strange, and how could they escape from there so quickly to the street. Zhang Xiling was very angry and said that he didn't want to chase these people today and only wanted to rest in his room. The girl began to say something to Zhang Xiling, but he did not understand her, and it dawned on him that he needed to peel off the tape so that she could tell. Zhang Xiling immediately put the girl on the sofa and peeled off the tape. He wanted to find out more details about these bandits and who they were. The girl asked Zhang Xiling not to chase these people and said that they were her father's mercenaries and he could let them go home. Zhang Xiling was surprised and asked how these people could be connected with her father, and he demanded an explanation from her for all this showdown. The girl asked Zhang Xiling if he really wondered why her father ordered these people to catch her, and it had nothing to do with him. Zhang Xiling said that if he had known earlier that this was just their family squabble, he would not have lifted a finger for her. Zhang Xiling said that he doesn't want to ask, and he only knows that she is his housekeeper, his person, and that's enough. The girl began to wave her hands and asked Zhang Xiling who was his man and why he decided that she was his property. But at that very second she felt pain in her hand, and she realized that she seemed to have injured her hand when these people tied her up, and her hand was very painful. Zhang Xiling got up and told the girl that she should rest well and tomorrow he would buy her medicine, but for now she could only go to bed. Zhang Xiling said that he helped the girl and was even confused about who the housekeeper was because he was more like her servant. Zhang Xiling went to bed and the next morning went to the pharmacy to buy the necessary medicine for his neighbor's injury. Zhang Xiling came out of the pharmacy and said that everything was bad and he did not expect that it would be so difficult to buy any medicine in this world. Zhang Xiling realized that the prices were too high and the effectiveness of the medicines was incomparable to the magical elixirs he had. And then Zhang Xiling thought, and a great idea came to his mind, and it was brilliant and only he could do it in this world. Zhang Xiling realized that this was a great idea for a business and he could make a fortune from these elixirs that were not there. After that, Zhang Xiling walked in these places and he spent half a day looking for medicinal herbs for the elixir of immortality and found nothing. Zhang Xiling thought that, however, at the bottom of this lake there is the very ice medicinal herb that he uses for the elixir. Zhang Xiling was walking in the vicinity of the city of Nanzhou, and in the forest behind him he heard a sound and asked who was there and told him to go out. And then some old man appeared in front of him and said that according to the instructions of the search energy frame, it should be there. The old man saw Zhang Xiling and wondered if there was someone else there. He told them that today Elder Ben would practice there. Ben said that he would practice witchcraft and magical powers do not tolerate prying eyes, and it would be better if Zhang left there quickly. Zhang Xiling asked Ben what kind of elder he was and was he really there filming a film about martial arts, and his imagination was surprising. Ben got angry and called Zhang an impudent man and asked how he dared to call an elderly man a beggar and an actor in films. Ben told the brat that today he will be able to see how Mount Kunlun will easily change thanks to the abilities of Elder Lao. Zhang Xiling said that he was supposedly very interested, and was the elder really going to cast a spell and he could barely stand on his feet from fear? Ben thought that this impudent man was too arrogant and he would show him his art and scare him to death, and then he would be shocked. Ben thought that they would wait until he had this ice grass in his hands and then use a spell to make him lose his memory. Ben stood next to the lake and thought that then Zhang Xiling would completely forget about his witchcraft and began to do something and read a spell. Zhang Xiling looked at Ben and asked why he was fooling him there and said that he might not try and he wouldn't believe him. Ben shouted at Zhang and asked what he even understood, and now he determines the exact location, and this is a very deep skill. Zhang Xiling wondered if Ben was still determining and wasn't she underwater, and if he could pull it out it would reduce his worries. Ben began to cast a spell and something worked for him, and he told Zhang Xiling that now he will see what he is quite capable of. And at that very second, whirlpools began to appear in the water, and Ben continued to cast magic and thought that now he would get the grass. And at that moment green waves began to appear in the water, and it was very interesting, and for some reason Zhang Xiling tensed up from this. Ben was delighted and told Zhang Xiling that the magic herb was really there and he was not mistaken and his spell worked perfectly. Zhang Xiling looked at it all and thought that it was too easy and shouldn't be there, and there was some kind of catch and secret in the water. Ben almost finished his spell and ordered the magic grass to rise to land at that moment, and he thought that now Zhang would cry. But suddenly huge waves began to appear in the water and Ben could not understand what it was because he had already stopped casting spells and it was strange. The waves continued to rise in the water and they had already reached such proportions that Ben was already scared from this and he fell to the ground. Ben asked Zhang Xiling what was happening there because in all these years it was the first time he had seen such strange waves occur in the water. Zhang Xiling said that magic potions are not obtained so easily and must be protected by some animal from others. Zhang Xiling asked Ben if he had forgotten this original and very important rule and Ben could not answer these words of Zhang. Ben looked at the water and froze in surprise and was in shock and said that it was incredible and he had never seen anything like this in his life. And at that same second, a huge snake suddenly crawled out of the water and Ben was very scared by this and immediately got up and ran away from there. Zhang Xiling told Ben that the guardian beast of this magic herb he was talking about has appeared and he won't have time to hide. The huge snake rushed towards Zhang Xiling and wanted to attack the one who disturbed his peace and came to take his magic grass. The huge snake began to approach Zhang Xiling and Ben still continued to run from there and hoped that he would be able to hide there. Zhang Xiling was not at all afraid of this huge beast and immediately began to use his strength and technique to stop the furious snake. And at that very second, Zhang Xiling directed many chains towards the huge snake and thought that this should stop the wild monster. Zhang Xiling began to bind the huge snake with his chains and this could save his life at the moment and this was a cool technique. Zhang Xiling began to tie up a huge monster and the snake did not know where to get away from these chains and began to hiss loudly and scream. Zhang Xiling managed to completely bind the huge snake monster from the lake and it fell and was powerless to cause any harm to Zhang. The huge snake immediately fell into the water and Zhang Xiling realized that he should stop using this technique and the snake was defeated by him. But Zhang Xiling waved his hand a few seconds later and he began to release the huge snake and cancelled his powerful chain technique. Zhang Xiling closed his eyes and began to remove all the chains from the monster and did not want it to suffer because of him and experience any pain. Zhang Xiling told the huge snake that he only needed to take the grass and he did not intend to kill the innocent animal now. Zhang Xiling asked the monster to leave from there and the snake obeyed him and began to go under the water and Ben now could not believe his eyes. Ben asked Zhang Xiling if he really subjugated this monster and how it was possible and what technique he used for this. And after a couple of minutes, the huge snake again appeared in front of Zhang and he was already holding in his mouth something green and glowing from the bottom of the lake. Zhang Xiling realized that it was the same magical grass that he had been looking for so long and a huge beast from the lake personally brought him the grass. Zhang Xiling tore off part of the grass and told the huge snake that he would give the root of this grass to him so that he could use it. Zhang told the snake that he could continue to grow this grass in the lake and it wouldn't take a few decades before it would grow again. The huge snake snuggled up to Zhang Xiling and thanked him for letting him go and giving him a root and swimming away into the very depths of the lake. Ben asked Zhang Xiling why he gave the grass root to the monster. It is also good for making any medicine. Zhang Xiling said that if the monster does not have this magic herb, sooner or later his spiritual power will be used up and he will die. Ben said why then they say that large snakes have been improving and developing for hundreds of years and his words were a lie. Ben said that a snake's gallbladder is worth a huge amount of value and just letting it go is a terrible waste and a disaster. Zhang Xiling said that it was a small gallbladder and how could he even pay attention to it and he just didn't see it. Ben was surprised and asked Zhang Xiling who he was and how he knew so many powerful techniques and could get along with monsters so easily. Ben asked Zhang Xiling to tell who he really was and Zhang began to think what to answer to this annoying old sorcerer. Zhang Xiling said that he is the golden light of the caves Qianyuan mountain and also a Superman and the Lord of Tai Ling and a hero. Ben asked Zhang Xiling if he was the Lord of the Sky, the Superman Tai, and Zhang told the old sorcerer that he quickly exposed him. Ben asked Zhang not to be arrogant with such insignificant strength and he just pretended to be helpless and looked at the skills. The old man said that Ben's surname was An and she was very famous among people and asked Zhang Xiling to respect him as a teacher. Zhang Xiling asked if, when Ben saw him for the first time, he called him his student and it seems that all he needs is his ice grass. And after these words Zhang Xiling disappeared from there and Ben turned around and was at a loss and did not understand where this impudent person could disappear so quickly. Zhang Xiling returned home and told the girl that he did not expect that the damage from the loss of strength would be so serious and powerful. Zhang said that only 4 pills could be prepared from the extract of this herb, and the ingredient that is added to the herb is difficult to find. The girl told Zhang Xiling that it smelled delicious and asked if it was chocolate and if she could try one of the candies. Zhang said that these are Zhu Yan pills and they will completely restore spiritual strength and cure wounds and illnesses and even prolong life. The girl told Zhang Xiling that he was lying and how 1 chocolate bar could heal all a person's wounds, and she didn't believe him at all. Zhang Xiling asked the girl if she knew where the medicinal herbs market was, and he wanted to go there and look at these herbs. After this, Zhang Xiling came to the southern part of the city and realized that this should be the medicinal herbal market about which he had heard a lot. Zhang Xiling looked at the herbs and thought that right now his spiritual power is very weak and therefore he needs to take a lot of medicine. First he had to figure out how to sell Dan pills and then figure out how to purchase even more of these herbs. Zhang Xiling was walking around the market and inspecting the herbs, but suddenly someone called him and he thought who could recognize his name in this market. Zhang Xiling turned around and the guy stood behind him and asked him if he really was Zhang Xiling and if he recognized him correctly at the market. Zhang Xiling saw this guy and wondered if it was Chen Huan, and he couldn't imagine that he would see him in this place today. Zhang Xiling, without moving, looked straight into Chen Huan's eyes and thought about what he should do next and how to act in such a situation. And at that very second Zhang Xiling rushed at Chen Huan, and all the people were in shock and did not understand why these people were fighting among themselves. Zhang Xiling and Chen Huan clashed their palms and checked who had more strength and power, and they put pressure on each other. Zhang Xiling and Chen Huan agreed that they would clash in their claps, and they began to prepare an attack to hit each other now. Chen Huan smiled and began to use a technique called wave claps and said that this attack was difficult to defend against. Zhang Xiling did not hesitate and immediately used the clap defense technique and told Chen that his attack would not be able to reach him. And immediately after this attack, Zhang Xiling was upset and said that he lost, and Chen Huan was glad that he managed to win against Zhang. Chen Huan told the scoundrel Zhang that how many years had passed since they had not seen each other and he was just as unlucky, and where was he? Zhang Xiling smiled and told Chen Huan that it was a long story and he came to the market to buy some of all the medicines. Chen Huan told Zhang that he knew all the local owners and they would go together and pick up something so that his friend would not be deceived by thieves. Chen Huan told Zhang that after that he would treat him to lunch and how long they had not seen each other and they simply had to get drunk and remember everything. Chen Huang said that the shopping area there was divided into 2 parts, and on the right there was a crowd of people buying ordinary cheap medicine. And on the left side there was grey antiquity, and there were few people there and all the rich people were there, and you can even buy 100-year-old ginseng. Chen Huan told Zhang Xiling that however, this is not the place where she and he could go and they needed to go to the right side and buy herbs. Zhang froze in place and looked at the grey antiquity on the left side of the market and thought that this was strange, and was it really the spiritual power section? And at that moment Zhang Xiling ran with all his might to the left side, and Chen Huan told him that he ran in the wrong direction and this is not the place for them. Chen Huan thought why he got involved with this troublesome guy, and since ancient times he has always been distinguished by not following commands. Chen Huan asked Zhang Xiling to stop, but he continued to run non-stop to the left side of the market and did not listen to his friend at all. Zhang Xiling found himself in front of the Temple of the 100 Treasures of Modernity and realized that the spiritual power had disappeared, but anyway it was inside the building. Zhang Xiling stood in front of the Bai Bao Tong Jin Temple, and at that moment Chen ran up to him and said that he ran fast and almost died. Chen Huan told his friend that Bai Bao Tong Jin is not a place where they can enter and they better get out of there before it's too late. But a minute after these words, guards appeared in front of them and told them to stand still, and Chen Huan realized that this was a problem. The security guard told Zhang that outsiders were not allowed to approach the entrance of their store and told him to quickly leave the place. Chen Huan stood in front of his friend and asked the guards not to swear and said that his friend was just lost and they were already leaving there. Chen Huan told Zhang that ordinary people do not go there, and recently one large merchant broke in and ended up being severely beaten. Chen Huan said that just overnight his company was bought by someone, and Zhang Xiling asked what was hidden behind this by Bao Tong Jin. Chen said that it is rumored that this is the largest auction and trading platform that has the right to import many goods. Zhang Xiling said that it couldn't be better and he was just worried that a good product had not yet found its best buyer. Chen Huan froze in surprise and asked Zhang Xiling if he was listening to him at all and what he had just told him for a few minutes. The guard laughed and told Zhang that if you add up the total cost for him, it will not be more than 200 yuan and that's not enough. The guard asked Zhang if he really wanted to come in and buy something, and it seemed to them that he was going to the store to sell his rags. Zhang Xiling asked the guards to stop and asked if they could stop judging people by their appearance, and this is very uncultural. The guard began to approach Zhang Xiling with a baton in his hands and asked the impudent man if he was really tired of living and was he so impudent. Chen Huan stood in front of his friend and asked the guards to smoke and not make sudden movements and said that he and his friend were already leaving there. But the guard hit Chen Huan in the face with a baton and told him to smoke his own cigarettes and only they didn't want to leave today. The guards began to run towards Zhang Xiling, but he said that in that case they were not surprised why he was such an unkind friend. Chen Huan grabbed the guards' batons and asked Zhang to quickly run away from there and he could handle it and there were people there who knew him. But the guards hit Chen Huan in the face with their other hand and told him to shut up and said that he was a weakling and finally closed his mouth. Chen Huan fell to the ground from the blow and the guards told the scoundrel that he had finally been caught and could lie there and never get up again. And at that moment Zhang Xiling attacked the guards and wanted to avenge his friend because he protected him from everything to the end. Zhang Xiling approached and wanted to hit the guard in the face, but he failed and the guard immediately grabbed his hand. The guard stood straight on his feet in front of Zhang Xiling and did not let him get hit and defended himself well from all his blows, and this is amazing. Zhang Xiling wondered how the guard managed to catch his hand, and it seemed that he was not some ordinary person and was strong. The guard wanted to hit Zhang Xiling, but he quickly dodged his blow and the guard missed and could not hit the nimble fighter. And after several blows, the guard did not find Zhang Xiling in front of him and turned around and thought how this fighter stood behind him. Zhang Xiling stood behind the guard, grabbed his hand and struck his blow to the target and hit and took the guard in his strong grip. Zhang Xiling told the guard that it was not bad and he still had some strength and it was cool and they were prepared. The second guard took out a stun gun and called Zhang a stinking brat and asked how he dared to raise his hand to the older man and beat him up. The guard told Zhang Xiling that now he would feel real pain and shot him with his taser and released electricity. Zhang Xiling immediately lit up with a bright flame and now he did not feel this shocker at all and began to use his technique. Zhang Xiling grabbed the shocker wire with his bare hands and pulled the wires out of himself, and he didn't feel any pain from it at all. Zhang Xiling quickly pulled out all the wires and threw them to the side and began to approach the guards to answer them for this shocker. The guards froze in surprise and wondered how this was possible and how this fighter was still standing on his feet after such a blow with a shocker. The guard radioed that they were in chaos at the main entrance and urgently needed reinforcements to defeat the enemy. And after a couple of minutes, all the guards who were guarding this building at that time began to run there and thought that this fighter would cry. The guards continued to come to the aid of their comrades and there were a lot of them and all of them were opposed by one Zhang Xiling. All the armed guards stood in front of the Bai Baotong building and wanted to see what this arrogant fighter could do now. Zhang Xiling looked at the guards and thought that there really were a lot of them, but he didn't care and he was confident in himself. The beaten guard told all his comrades that together they would kill this intruder and if they all attacked him he would be dead. And then all the guards started running towards Zhang Xiling and they were ready for battle, but at that moment someone asked them to stop. The man came out of this building and asked what this wild outrage was and asked everyone to quickly stop all the unnecessary fighting. Zhang Xiling was just getting ready for a fight with the guards, but he also stopped and looked at this man and thought who he was. Zhang Xiling stood next to his friend Chen Huan and they listened very carefully to the words of the man who stopped the fight. The man said that this friend scared them all and asked Zhang Xiling to pass and one respected person wanted to meet him. Inside by Baotong Jin, all the people greeted Zhang Xiling well and they all asked him to go into the room without any worries. Chen Huan asked Zhang's friend if he knew why the respected gentleman in white clothes suddenly called them to this guarded building. Zhang Xiling told his friend that he also didn't understand this and didn't know what was going on and asked him to look first and then discuss everything. The man in white clothes asked Zhang Xiling to go to the room where one person had been waiting for him for a long time and asked him not to worry. Zhang Xiling wondered who could have been waiting for him all this time and who this mysterious man was and why didn't they just kick him out of there. They entered the room and the man told the monk Tao that the man whom he asked to be brought to him had arrived and had been waiting for him all the time. Monk Tao told the man that he and Zhang Xiling had already met, and Chen Huan said that he was leaving because Zhang knew this monk. Chen said that according to rumors, the monk is an incomparable master in the field of effectively searching and making immortality pills and others. Chen Huan said that the monk could also look for treasures and at the same time he was an incredibly rich man and an outstanding person. Zhang realized that it seemed like the spiritual power he had felt earlier came from this old man and he was interested in learning a lot about him. Zhang thought, isn't this a large auction house in the province and he has authority there, and he was worried that there was no market for ingredients. Zhang Xiling thought that in addition, he continues to mistake him for his successor, and it seems that he has come up with a plan just in time. Zhang Xiling stood in front of the Tao monk and the monk wanted to talk to him and tell him a lot of interesting information that he did not know. But when no one expected this, Zhang fell at the monk's feet and told the monk if he had not stopped the fight he would have been in prison. The man told the monk that at first they mistook him for his student and only then realized that they were mistaken and hoped that he was not surprised. Chen Huan was surprised and asked Zhang if he had really been training with this elder for all these 8 years and how was this possible. Zhang knew that the harmless elder wanted to get the ice grass, but now it was better for him to take advantage of the situation and help him. Zhang Xiling thought that by the way, the monk could help him a lot due to his position, and don't worry, he won't let him down now. The monk thought why Zhang Xiling was so angry and who he was and why he was hugging him so tightly and didn't want to let him go. The monk asked the good fellow why he came there and was it really for the sake of his teacher and wanted to observe the future course of events. Zhang Xiling said to the master, did he really forget that a couple of days ago he didn't get the ice grass, but he processed it and made pills? The monk wondered if Zhang had finally received Li Dan's magic pills, and this was unthinkable and he was clearly an expert in his field. The man was surprised by these words and asked Zhang Xiling if these were Li Dan's pills, and the monk said that now there is one important matter. Zhang said that he spent a huge amount of spiritual energy to create them and he tried his best and they were great. Zhang Xiling told the man that these pills not only heal wounds but also increase life expectancy, and this is true. Zhang Xiling gave one pill to Chen Huan and the monk asked what kind of nonsense it was and he asked to let him look at the pills. After a couple of minutes, Chen Huan immediately transformed and he immediately felt the effect of this pill and his injuries disappeared and he became healthy. The man asked the elder if he really wanted to put these pills up for sale because he had seen their effect with his own eyes. The monk said that he would like to have such a medicine, and this is luck, and this knowledge was completely transferred to his receiver and he was great. Zhang Xiling told them that he did not have a mobile phone yet and to tell them something they would contact his friend who was glowing with happiness. The man said that in that case, he plans to send them directly to the auction and inform all Sichuan important people about her. All the people went about their business and Zhang Xiling and the monk were alone in the room and could now have a heart-to-heart talk about pills. The monk asked Zhang who he was and, contrary to other cultivators, he made him believe in such incredible people. He said that his name is Zhang Xiling and other things are still inconvenient to disclose, but if they cooperate, they will benefit. And to prepare the pills of immortality there was everything, rare books and everything else, but he just lacked the materials for the medicine. The monk asked Zhang Xiling not to worry about it and follow the old man and then everything would be cool and the two of them would do business. The monk brought Zhang Xiling to a room in this building and slapped a huge drawing on the wall and said that now he would be surprised by something. And at that very second the wall began to move upward and a bright golden glow immediately began to appear in the room and it was cool. And then the door opened completely and Zhang Xiling asked the monk what it was because he did not expect to see this and was very surprised. Zhang Xiling saw people standing in this room and checking valuable artifacts and treasures, and there were many rare things there. The monk said that Bai Baotong Jin was a very large auction market more than 100 years ago and all the rich people often went there. The monk told Zhang that this was one of the rare places for unusual things and there he could find everything he wanted to find. After that, Chen and Zhang went outside and Chen told his friend that he didn't expect that he disappeared for a couple of years to become such a talent. Chen Huan asked his friend that this time he came back specifically to meet his friend and Zhang asked him to finish. Zhang Xiling asked Chen Huan to better tell him what happened to his sister and whether he knew any information about her. Chen Huan said that at that time he had problems in his family and he didn't even have time to pay attention to it then. Chen Huan told Zhang that he only heard that she was taken in by a rich family and after that but did not hear any news. Chen Huan asked his friend to cheer up because they had not seen each other for so many years and he had not forgotten that they would get drunk tonight. Chen Huan asked his friend to put in a good word for him with this elder and Zhang Xiling said that he would talk to him for him. Zhang Xiling thought that now the old man was probably assessing his losses because he told him a lot of words and a lot of different stories. Zhang Xiling remembered what he told the old man so that first he would not forget to send these treasures to his home and he would let him down. Chen brought a friend to a restaurant and asked him not to look at the fact that this restaurant is small but the whole of Nanzhou always dine there. Chen Huan told Zhang Xiling that regardless of the amount of money, ordinary people like to eat there and have a good time together. And when they entered the restaurant, Chen Huan was surprised and wondered why there were so many people there and did they really have some kind of promotion? Chen Huan thought maybe they were in the wrong restaurant because on other days there wasn't such a queue and he didn't know why everyone came. Zhang Xiling said that nothing bad happened and they could wait and eat well in this excellent establishment. Neighbor Zhang Xiling was also sitting in this restaurant and she said that she had finally stood her turn and would now have a blast there. The girl sat and ate non-stop and people said that now this girl will get drunk and she can't be stopped now. The girl continued to eat food without a break and did not look at the people around her in the restaurant and she did not care about their opinions. But at that moment Zhang Xiling suddenly approached her and asked her how she was doing and how she felt and asked her not to choke on food. The girl was surprised and called him a fool and asked who dared to disturb her at such an important moment and distract her from food. Zhang Xiling said that she didn't have money to pay rent for the apartment or she was just wasting all her money. The girl's mood immediately dropped and she asked if it was Zhang Xiling and she never expected to see her neighbor there. Chen Huan immediately approached Zhang Xiling and asked if he really knew this beauty and she was beautiful and he liked her. The girl asked Zhang Xiling if she couldn't spend her savings as a sacrifice to her stomach because she was very hungry today. Chen Huan said that since even some people were not left out because of this, he invited a friend today and they got together for dinner. Chen Huan asked Zhang Xiling if he could introduce him to his fiancée and Zhang said that this was a lie and she was not his girlfriend. The girl got angry and thought what kind of strange friend of her neighbor Zhang Xiling was and was saying very strange and ridiculous things. Chen Huan asked the waiter for 2 more people at this table and they wanted to sit until the morning and have a blast and drink heartily. The girl asked Zhang Xiling if he would be angry with the person who lives at his house and does his household chores. The girl also ordered fried pork ribs and 3 chickens, as well as beef with spicy sauce, and she wanted to eat all of this herself to the end. And then, when they were waiting for their food, someone called, approached Zhang Xiling and Chen Huan and said, was it really them, and he couldn't believe his eyes. Jiang Jingsheng stood next to them with some girl and said that he never expected to see old familiar faces in this restaurant. Zhang Xiling and Chen Huan looked at Jiang with nonsense and did not want to communicate with this man because he disgusted them. The girl next to him asked Jiang Jingsheng if they were friends and he said that these two were just his old classmates from school. The girl told Jiang Jingsheng that his wife was hungry and didn't want to stand in line, and Jiang agreed with her and said that he would solve everything. Jiang Jingsheng asked Zhang Xiling to see that there was no room in this cafe and to fix it he should give him a table. Zhang Xiling said that he refused to do this and that he should immediately leave there because they had nothing else to talk about. Jiang Jingsheng at that moment threw a wad of money into the table in front of Zhang Xiling and asked if this was really missing and he could add. Chen Huan slammed his hand on the table and told Jiang Jingsheng that they had already told him no and told him to get out of there quickly. Jiang Jingsheng told Chen Huan that he knew that he was in a difficult situation in that case and he could add money and compensate for everything. Zhang Xiling asked what this was all about and Jiang asked if he didn't know and his parents were carrying out a program and preventing this house from being demolished. Jiang Jingsheng said that elderly people who do not want to move can be easily solved or made worse and what he wanted to do. Chen Huan was very angry with Jiang Jingsheng and called him a brute and jumped towards him with the intention of hitting this scoundrel with all his might. Chen Huang just wanted to hit Jiang Jingsheng but his guards immediately appeared in front of him and kept his fist from hitting the enemy. Jiang Jingsheng's security guard swung his hand and wanted to hit Chen Huan back and punish him for trying to hit his boss Jiang. The guard's hand almost touched Chen Huan's face and he thought that he had attacked the scoundrel in vain and now he would receive a blow from the guard. But at the last moment Zhang Xiling managed to grab the guard's hand and saved his friend from injury and began to tightly squeeze the guard's hand. Zhang Xiling told the guard to get out of there and not interfere with him and his friends having a good time together and enjoying their vacation. The security guard shouted at the entire restaurant and asked Zhang Xiling to let go of his hand because he was in a lot of pain and couldn't stand it anymore. Zhang Xiling used the technique and the guard flew a couple of meters away from him and he sat on the floor and thought that Zhang was powerful. The security guard fell down next to his boss Jiang Jingsheng and thought that they should have messed with this rabid fighter because he was strong. Jiang Jingsheng told Zhang Xiling that he would know the full weight of his anger and how he dared to raise his hand against his faithful guard. Jiang Jingsheng pointed his finger at Zhang Xiling and then he grabbed his finger and began to squeeze it so that it hurt him and he would not let go. Jiang Jingsheng asked Zhang Xiling to let him go and how could he dare to grab his finger and interrupt him while talking. Jiang Jingsheng released his finger and told Zhang Xiling that he was an asshole and he will pay for this act and he will punish him for this. Zhang Xiling looked menacingly at Jiang Jingsheng and ordered him to get away from there and never appear in his eyes again. The guard and Jiang Jingsheng's wife looked at Zhang Xiling and they realized that unfortunately they could not do anything with the fighter. Jiang Jingsheng asked his people to follow him and said that they were leaving from there and promised Zhang that he would take revenge on him for his act. Jiang Jingsheng asked Zhang Xiling and others to wait and soon he will finish with them and they should remember these words forever. After this, Zhang Xiling returned home with the girl and they had to rest and forget yesterday's events in the restaurant. Zhang Xiling sat on the sofa and sipped drinks, and the girl worked at his house in the morning and performed all the duties of the owner's house. Zhang Xiling told her that many days had passed and there was no news from the auction, and how could he now buy medicinal herbs without money? Zhang Xiling asked the girl maybe he should go deep into the mountains and look for herbs there and then someone knocked on his front door. And then Chen Huan came to visit him and told Zhang that he needed to go to the alumni meeting and why was he still sitting at home like that. Zhang Xiling asked about the alumni meeting and he almost forgot about it and Chen Huan was shocked and asked if he was serious. Chen Huan asked the bride if she would go to this meeting and all their classmates could bring family members and she could go. The girl thought about a party and dinner with her students and realized that there would be meat and a lot of food and this completely suited her stomach. The girl was very happy and told the students that she also wanted to go with them and asked them to wait for her and said that she was getting dressed. Zhang Xiling asked what was fun about meeting his classmates because sitting with them was very uninteresting. A second later the girl appeared in front of Zhang Xiling in a beautiful dress and he thought what kind of transformation it was in just a second. After that, the three of them went to the Jiangjuzui Hotel where at that time there was an alumni meeting and many wanted to see each other. All the former students were having fun in the restaurant and talking to each other and they were having a lot of fun and were happy to meet the graduates. For this meeting, the students chose a very good place and everyone drank drinks and the students one by one began to gather in this restaurant. The girl sat and continued to eat without stopping and Zhang Xiling said that she had already eaten a lot and how did she not burst yet. Chen Huan handed Zhang Xiling a mobile phone and said that Boss Lu prepared the phone especially for him a couple of days ago. Chen Huan told Zhang that then he forgot to give him the phone and contacts were already saved there, including the auction organizers. Zhang Xiling said that this phone is very big and remembered that his push-button Nokia was so convenient to use at that time. Zhang Xiling was looking at his new phone and studying it and Chen Huan told his friend that the phone should have been turned over first. Chen Huan showed and said that this was needed for shooting videos or photos, and this was for communication, calls and letters for friends. Zhang Xiling thought that in the 8 years of his absence, phones had undergone major changes and were now difficult to use. The disciples asked to look at Master Jiang and said that they were a very beautiful couple and she was still beautiful years later. The host approached him and said that President Jiang Jingsheng was also there and he asked if he could tell him a few words for them. Jiang Jingsheng told all the students that they all hadn't seen each other since middle school and he was glad to meet everyone today and said thank you. Jiang Jingsheng said that it so happened that this place belongs to the Jiang family, so today everything was at his expense and it was from the heart. All the students said that President Jiang was the best and he was so handsome, and they asked to drink for such a generous and kind person. The girl asked Zhang Xiling why this meat suddenly stopped smelling, and Chen Huan asked her not to think and just eat. The student approached Zhang Xiling and Chen Huan and said that all people drink and they are not special, and he and his girlfriend should drink. The girl asked the student why they should respect him, and he told Zhang Xiling that his girlfriend was such an uncultured lady. The student said that Jiang Jingsheng always welcomes all guests so warmly, and she did not thank him and asked why this was so. Zhang Xiling told Chu Chi's student that he was quite happy with everything, so her behavior was none of his business and it didn't concern him. The student said that he was embarrassed and he knew that the president gave him money, but he hurt him and his hand was still wrapped. Zhang Xiling turned around and told the student that he was very good at exaggeration and could work as a storyteller. And at that moment, all the girls gathered in front of Jiang Jingsheng and they asked the president how he was feeling and if everything was okay. President Jiang Jingsheng told the former students that everything was very good and asked them not to worry about him and to rest there. The students told Zhang Xiling that he had crossed the line and told him to quickly apologize to the president for this vile act. The students told Zhang Xiling that President Jiang Jingsheng was so good and he lent him money, but he turned out to be a traitor. Zhang Xiling told the students that it was so strange that they just stood there and scolded him without really knowing anything and defended Jiang. President Jiang Jingsheng thanked the students for their support but asked them to forget about it and not let him hurt anyone else. The disciples told Jiang Jingsheng that even though he was so merciful, such things could not be ignored. The student told Jiang that bastards like him were a burden on their colorful society, and they said that they couldn't let them go so easily. All the students agreed with their friend and told Zhang Xiling that he said everything correctly and he must explain himself to Jiang. But at that moment Chen Huan could not stand it and grabbed a bottle of wine and smashing it, hitting the table, he grabbed the bottle and he told him to shut up. Zhang Xiling asked Chen Huan to forget about these students and it was so boring and uninteresting and asked him to leave from there now. Disciple Chu Chi asked Zhang Xiling how he wanted to just leave there after everything he said to President Jiang Jingsheng. Disciple Chu Chi shouted and told all the students that there was no way they could let Zhang Xiling and Chen Huan just leave the restaurant. The disciples agreed with Chu Chi and said that he was completely right and immediately surrounded Zhang Xiling and Chen Huan from all sides. Zhang Xiling said what a familiar feeling it was to first beat and then ask questions, and the students thought that they could beat him. The students asked Zhang Xiling if he despised them and said that then it was hatred of the entire Chinese nation and they were ashamed. Disciple Chu Chi asked Zhang Xiling if he should apologize to the president and said that then he would definitely not leave there alive. Chu Chi ordered all the disciples to grab Zhang Xiling and looked at President Jiang Jingsheng and he gave him the go-ahead for all these actions. Disciple Chu Chi slowly and quietly approached Zhang Xiling and took his hand and told all the students that he had caught him and this was a chance to beat him. But Zhang Xiling pushed Chu Chi away from him with one movement and he fell to the floor with a crash and said that his arm hurt a lot. Chu Chi told all the students that they were idiots and they had such a chance but they missed it and ordered them all to attack him with a whole group. Chu Chi ordered the students to turn Zhang Xiling into a cake so that no one would recognize him and all the students began to attack Zhang Xiling. The student came close to Zhang Xiling and wanted to strike, but Zhang easily defended himself from his blow and even grabbed his hand. And Zhang Xiling immediately dealt a strong blow to the student and he realized that they underestimated Zhang, and when did he become so strong? After the impact, the student flew away from him a couple of meters and crashed into the rest of the students and they all fell to the ground together and screamed. Zhang Xiling looked back and realized that the rest of the students wanted to attack him, but he was completely uninterested and bored. Zhang Xiling stood and yawned from boredom, and two students wanted to hit him before he expected it and thought that they would definitely succeed. But Zhang Xiling tightly grabbed one of the students by the hand and his courage ran away somewhere and he asked his friend to let him go now. But Zhang Xiling took this disciple by his hand and threw him straight at the second disciple who wanted to attack and they regretted it. Zhang Xiling continued to hit the students in the face and it was more like his training because the students were no different from mannequins. Zhang Xiling said that now he will show the students the skill of how he learned to punch during this time and hit the student in the face. Zhang Xiling said that now he would show them the ability to kick and they could memorize the movements and beat the student with his foot. The students were already afraid to approach Zhang Xiling and thought that over these 8 years he had turned into some kind of monster and master. Chu Qi asked the students not to be afraid of this bastard and said that he had already called the police and if they all attacked him, he would not be able to stand it. The students believed brother Chu Qi and all went together to Zhang so that, as the brother said, they would simultaneously attack this martial master. But Zhang Xiling, without straining, threw all the students to the side and they realized that this was also useless and did not know what to do. And then the healthiest and strongest student approached the students and ordered everyone to move out of his way and said that he would sort it out now. The huge student jumped towards Zhang Xiling and the students immediately thought that he was their last hope for victory at Zhang. Zhang Xiling at this time was dealing with the last student and, taking him by the scruff of the neck, asked why he decided to attack him. And at the last moment Zhang Xiling noticed that a very huge man was flying towards him and thought that he would not have time to defend himself from him. And at that very second, the healthiest student landed directly on Zhang Xiling and stuck him into the ground with his entire fat body. Chen Huang and the housekeeper were afraid for Zhang Xiling's health and thought that he had suffered from such a mass on himself and were worried. The huge disciple continued to put pressure on Zhang Xiling, and all the disciples also joined him and lay on him to increase their weight. The biggest disciple thought that everything was over with Zhang Xiling, but suddenly he saw a bright blue glow in front of him. The huge student was surprised what it was, but at that moment Zhang Xiling used the technique and all the students flew away somewhere. Zhang Xiling freed himself from everyone and stood safe and sound in the center of the restaurant and thought that now there seemed to be no enemies left. Chen Huan came running to him and asked Zhang if he was okay and said that it was very crazy and he was a very cool fighter. President Jiang Jingsheng looked at this beating of his people and thought that this nasty bastard again ruined everything like always. And then the police entered the restaurant and ordered all the people in this room not to move until they allowed them to make different movements. Chu Qi ran up to the captain and hugged him and said that it was good that he came and that bully Zhang Xiling beat up all the students of the school. The officer listened to the words of the injured person and asked Chu Qi who Zhang Xiling was and if he could show them this person. Chu Qi's disciple pointed his finger at Zhang Xiling and told the officers that it was him and he was an evil bully and he was completely crazy. The officers asked Citizen Zhang to come with them and hoped that he would not resist and they would continue the conversation at the station. Chen Huan asked the officers to wait a couple of minutes and asked them why they were arresting Zhang Xiling because he was their victim. The officer asked Chen Huan not to worry and said that if Zhang is not guilty they will let him go but he can go with a friend. But the police officer told Chen Huan that Zhang Xiling was still obliged to put handcuffs on himself and Chu Qi was very happy about this event. The officer took out handcuffs and told Zhang Xiling that if he did not resist, he could put them on himself. Chen Huan approached his friend and asked him not to be impulsive and he would call Boss Lu and he would help them sort out this problem. Zhang thought that his friend was right and he didn't think about it and it would be better if he gained time and then he got a great idea. Zhang Xiling asked Chen Huan for the photo he took in the restaurant and asked his friend if this photo was still next to him. Chen Huan told his friend that of course he had the photo and he wanted to delete it, but it was good that he didn't do it then. Zhang Xiling showed the phone to the officers and asked them to look there and said that there was clear evidence of his innocence. The police officers looked at the phone with interest and thought that they seemed to have a very wrong opinion about Zhang in the beginning. President Jiang Jingsheng disciple Chu Qi thought that the matter was bad and it looks like they completely screwed up and will be punished. Zhang Xiling told Detective Conan that these photos could clearly explain everything and asked him to look at this officer on his phone. Zhang Xiling said that 2 days ago he and Chen Huan met Jiang Jingsheng in a restaurant and by the way he was there with an unfamiliar woman. There were no empty seats and after meeting with them, Jiang threatened them to take away the table and tried to give them money and then ordered them to be killed. Zhang said that all this was to get a table and he took self-defense measures and did not violate anything in the rules of the country. Zhang said that after this, Jiang was afraid that his gangster affairs would be revealed. Today he directed all the anger at him and the case was solved. Zhang told the officers that if they still didn't believe him, they could call the restaurant and look at the surveillance footage. Zhang asked the officers if they would be interested in learning about all the sins of this Jiang Jingsheng and it was a very interesting truth. Tang Yu asked Jiang Jingsheng if he didn't swear allegiance to her and who this woman was and how should she even understand this. The student said did President Jiang cheat on his wife and was not such a good person and they were wrong about him. The student said that now it became clear to them why President Jiang went crazy and beat these people and he was angry with them and lied to all the people. The student said that they thought that the president was actually different, but now they realized that they were mistaken, he is a scoundrel. But President Jiang asked to wait a minute and said that this was slander and Jiang could not tell him this and should be in prison. But at that moment someone came into the restaurant and said that this was complete nonsense and now he himself would put everything in its place and solve the mess. The officer turned around and noticed that it was Chief Lee and he asked the chief why he came there and what he needed there. The boss answered his man and asked why he shouldn't be there and why they didn't tell the boss that they were having problems. The president walked up to Chief Lee and said that it was he Jiang Jingsheng and he was there on time and asked to arrest Jiang Xiling now. But Chief Lee did not listen to President Jiang and ordered his officers to quickly arrest this man for breaking the law. The officers immediately approached President Jiang and handcuffed him and said that he was under arrest, many violations of the law of the country. President Jiang couldn't understand why the police chief arrested him and told the officers that they had made a mistake and caught the wrong person. President Jiang told the officers that he was the heir of the Jiang groups and part of this city was under the influence of his family. President Jiang said that he has connections and did not break the law, unlike Jiang, and he slandered him and why he was detained. Chief Lee told Jiang that they had received information that the Jiang family was embezzling citizens' money and bribing all the people. Chief Lee told President Jiang that his company's assets were frozen and subject to investigation and that his connections were not solving anything right now. President Jiang Jingsheng asked Chief Lee to stand and let him go, otherwise he will contact his lawyer and he will help him in this matter. Mr. Liu told Director Lee that he had done a great job and if it weren't for him, they wouldn't have been able to catch the real lawbreaker. Chief Lee told Mr. Liu that if it weren't for him, they wouldn't have been able to shut down so many scammers and he is happy that there is such a person. People said is it really Mr. Liu and even Jiang Group can't compare with him but they didn't know who this person really was. People said that they had heard about bribes but did not think that it was so serious and that President Jiang was so sinful. Mr. Liu told Mr. Zhang that the one who humiliated him had already been arrested and he did not expect that he could justify himself like that after that. Mr. Liu told Zhang that the auction would be held at 8 in the evening and Zhang said thank you to Mr. Liu and promised to come to the auction. Chu Chi's disciple stood in shock and did not believe that Jiang Xiling and Mr. Liu knew each other and this was the end for him. People said that this disciple really turned out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing and they did not believe that Mr. Liu and Jiang Xiling were friends. People said that they should never have believed rumors about guys like him, no matter that he didn't think about them. Tang Yu wondered if she had made a mistake in her love choice and chose the wrong person and Jiang was a scoundrel. After that, in the evening Jiang Xiling and his friends came to the auction hall to look at interesting exhibits. The girl said that there were a lot of influential people there and Chen Huan said that he also didn't expect it to be like that. Jiang Xiling thought that this is not bad and this is certainly not a heavenly pavilion, but he can easily sell it to these rich people. The host of the auction came on stage and told all the guests that the auction would start soon and they were glad to see all the guests at their place. The man said that the show was starting and he couldn't wait for it and asked his darling if this event was not exciting. The woman told her boyfriend that she heard that some surprise awaits them in the finale and it was a real treasure. All the influential businessmen were watching this auction and were waiting for something interesting and grandiose in this expensive auction. Old people who were interested in rare things also sat there and thought that this auction should be a great event. The presenter said good evening to all the guests and said that at this moment the auction was starting now and they wanted to live up to expectations. The presenter said that today there would be an auction between 4 groups and asked to meet the first participants in Eastern Zhou Ligui. All the guests were glad to meet the first participants and greeted them very warmly with thunderous applause and good words. The monk approached Jiang Xiling and told the student that finally he was there because the teacher had been waiting for his best student for a long time. Jiang Xiling brought his pill with him and said that he had to impress all the people so that they would buy the pill. Jiang Xiling told the master that he put a pill inside and asked the teacher when he would go on stage to all the guests. The girl told Chen Huan that this old man looked somehow unreliable and for some reason she did not want to trust such a person. The monk told Jiang Xiling that his bottle was too cheap and they were in the grand finals and he gave the student his bottle. The monk said that good pills should be stored in good jade, and Zhang thought that he had almost forgotten that this was a rare treasure. And at that second, one of the auction hosts approached the monk with Zhang and said that the final was soon and let them prepare to leave. And after a couple of minutes, Zhang Xiling came onto the stage along with the teacher, and they wanted to present their incredible immortality pills. People said, did these people really want to present something in a jade cold box, and even one it was very valuable. People recognized the elder, but they didn't know who the guy next to him was, and they were very interested in what was inside. The presenter asked everyone to prepare signs because they are now presenting the finalist of the grand finalist of their auction, Zhu Yen Dan. People froze in surprise and thought, how is this possible, and is it really true? And this is the legendary Zhu Yen Dan about whom legends are made. And at that moment, Zhang Xiling opened the box in front of the audience and showed them the legendary immortality pill, and it was completely true. People felt the energy that came from this pill, and they felt very good and were happy to see this pill. The man asked the master if this was a real legendary pill that was written about in books and stories told. The master asked Mr. Wei not to worry and said that everything was real, and this was his student Zhang Xiling, and they were preparing. The master said that he and the student worked hard to get it, and if he is not sure, he can check the pill after the auction. The master said that if the result does not suit this man, then he will pay him double and will definitely keep his given word. People said that they trusted the master, and he always met their expectations, and he always brought very interesting old artifacts. The host told all the guests that they would start an auction, and the starting bid for this rare immortality pill was $5 million. The presenter said that they have a rule, and a person can add at least 1 million if he wants to raise his bid for an item. The woman held up her sign and said that her opening bid was $10 million, and then a dispute began over this pill. The man held up his sign and said that he would raise the bid and offered $15 million for a rare pill. All the people raised the stakes, and one of the people, number 5, said that he would give 50 million net for this pill. But after him, participant number 1 said that he would raise the rate a lot and offered 100 million and waited for a reaction. The man told Mr. Wei that if he did not enter the auction, then this incredible immortality pill would belong only to him. Old Man Wei intervened in the auction and said that then he would raise this bid to $1 billion, and he was ready to take this risk. People looked with interest as two people asked each other for a pill, and one of them gave $1 billion and 200 million. But Old Man Wei didn't want to give up and raise the bet to such figures as $1.5 billion, and it was just some kind of madness. But the man said that he, too, was not a mistake and raised the rate to $1.8 billion, and people were shocked. But Old Man Wei again outdid his bid and raised his price to $2 billion, and this was the first time people had heard such figures. The man was surprised and asked how this was possible, and the presenter announced that the auction was over and the immortality pill went to Old Man Wei. Zhang Xiling was very happy and thought, is it really the power of money? And he seems to have fallen in love and started making money after returning to the world. Zhang Xiling took the pill and went to Old Man Wei, who himself won the pill at the auction and wanted to give him the prize he won. Wei was very pleased that he managed to win this auction because he needed this pill to continue his life. Wei immediately took out the immortality pill and ate it and began to wait for at least some effect from this pill, which he bought very expensively. And at that moment, Wei's eyes began to glow, and he threw away his cane and felt a sharp surge of strength and energy in his body. And then Old Man Wei's wrinkles began to disappear from his face, and he wondered if all these stories about pills were not a fairy tale but the truth. Old Man Wei felt that his decrepit body began to disappear, and his skin also changed and became softer than before the pill. Old Man Wei immediately became younger after taking this pill and said, was it really true, because he doubted its effect until the last moment? The man who lost the auction looked at Old Man Wei and thought that it was in vain that he did not give all his money for the pill and lost in the end. Old Man Wei told Zhang Xiling that Zhu Yongdan was worthy of his name, and even 2 billion was worth it, and he had no regrets. And then people began to approach the master in a crowd and asked if he still had such pills, and they wanted to buy them faster than others. People asked when the next auction was, and they were ready to pay 3 billion and even more if there was still one left. The man asked the master to take his business card and said that he would immediately pay them in dollars if they gave him this wonderful pill. And at that very second, all the people crowded in front of the master, and they even argued among themselves so that they could get that very pill. Zhang Xiling told the master that his mission there was over and everything was fine, and he could leave this matter to his wise teacher. Zhang Xiling quickly left the stage, leaving the master alone there, and thought that it was good that he managed to leave this crowd of people in time. People continued to crush the master, and he asked the student just not to leave him to help him with this crowd of people who wanted pills. After this, Zhang Xiling returned home in a very good and wonderful mood, and he was glad that everything he thought about came true. Zhang Xiling hummed a song to himself, and he bought various products to cook something delicious for this dinner at home. But the dog next to Zhang Xiling was constantly looking somewhere behind his back, and Zhang realized that something was wrong, and the dog felt it. And then Zhang Xiling saw that behind him there was a man sitting on the ground whom he had not noticed at first and could have simply passed by. Zhang Xiling approached this stranger, and he wanted to look at his face, which completely covered his torso and head. Zhang Xiling looked intently at this man, and when he saw his face, he realized that it was not at all what he expected to see. Zhang Xiling saw that there was an inanimate person sitting there, and his skin wrinkled in a strange way, and it was a very creepy sight. Zhang Xiling began to use his technique to find out what happened to this man, and in the end to find that very truth. Zhang Xiling learned important information and realized that this man was injured by the soul-devouring sword, and that is why he now looked like this. Zhang Xiling said the man was killed by his sword, and it was very interesting, and he began to remember some details from his life. In the surrounding forests, all the birds became alarmed and began to fly in different directions, as a chase began in this forest in the middle of the night. It was hard for the girl, but she was running away from all the people who were chasing him non-stop, and she shouldn't have stopped. The girl continued to run without looking back, but people told her to stand, otherwise she would have serious problems and would regret it. The girl thought that she had already managed to escape as she ran without stopping for a couple of minutes, but a bright light began to flash behind her. And at that very second, many people appeared behind her, and they had very bad intentions, and they were all well armed. But the man approached her and decided to use his very violent technique, and there was a skull on his hand, and it began to glow. The man stood behind the girl and swung his arm with all his might and prepared to strike her with his powerful fist. The girl turned around and thought that she would not have time to escape his blow, and it was very bad, and she did not have time to escape during this time. And at that very second the man dealt a strong blow to the girl, and immediately he immobilized her, and she was in great pain from such a violent technique. The girl fell to the ground, and the man said that everyone who came across this sword was already dead, and they would see if she would run away now. The man asked his brother why complicate everything so much, and offered to catch her and send her to the other brothers so that they could have fun too. The man said that they should be careful because she so brazenly used a magic sword to kill her brother and is now punished. The girl lay on the ground and pretended that she had lost consciousness, but she listened to all the words that these people were talking about in front of her. And at that same second the girl jumped towards these men, and she quickly took out her sword and decided to give a serious rebuff to the men. The girl stood in front of these people without fear, and blue waves began to come out of her sword, and she thought that now these people would regret it. The man said that this cannot be, and she again collects the power of the magic sword and ordered the rest of the people to act faster. The man with the axe decided to carry out his brother's order and jumped high towards this girl and wanted to punish her for being so impudent towards them. The girl got angry and her eyes filled with blood, and she realized that if she didn't finish them off now, there might not be another chance. The girl swung her sword and thought that in vain this man with an axe came up to her, and now he will regret that he was born. And at that very second the girl struck a powerful blow with all her might, and this man with an axe put up a defense in front of himself so as not to die. That night, the battle between them lasted for a long time, and in the end she managed to escape from there to rest after a difficult battle. The girl exhaled and realized that she had found a safe place and she could take a breath to prepare for new battles. But the girl's hand hurt a lot, and she thought that now she was fully feeling the consequences of this fight, where it was very difficult for her. The girl sat near a tree and said that the last drop of her spiritual energy was taken by a magic sword and she had no strength left. The girl thought that the effect of the sword was incredible, but at the same time she took a lot of energy from her master and her fighter. The girl looked to the side and told the master that she tried her best and did everything in her power and even a little more. The girl cried and told the master brother that she really didn't want to do this, but there are such sad moments in life. The girl cried non-stop and began to think about those who saved her, and she was grateful to these people for their help in difficult times. And at that same second, sounds began to be heard next to the girl, and it was like someone was approaching her in this dark forest. And after a couple of minutes a man appeared in front of her, but she didn't want to pay attention to him at all and was just thinking about her friends. The girl was sitting unconscious and the man approached her and said that their patriarch wanted her to be unable to escape from there by any means. The man noticed that she was sitting unconscious and saw a magic sword and thought that she had left her unattended and this was his chance. The man wanted to take this sword with him and grabbed it, but he could not lift it and thought that this sword did not want to belong to him. But then suddenly red waves began to come from the sword and they injured this man and did not allow him to take this magical sword. The man was in shock and could not find an explanation for how it attacked him even when the owner of the sword was unconscious next to him. And after a couple of hours at night in this forest it became very quiet and all the pursuit of this girl stopped and the rest of the people also disappeared. The girl began to come to her senses and wondered if during all this time no one had touched her and this was very good for her health. And then the girl noticed the body of that man in front of her and thought that she had lost consciousness, but where was the expert who helped her then? The girl took out her sword and wondered if the others had stopped chasing her and she could now run away from there without haste. But as soon as she grabbed the sword, the girl began to hear strange voices in her head and was surprised and did not know how to explain it. The girl began to ask who was speaking because she clearly heard the voice and was sure that someone was there but was hiding well from her. And then red waves began to glow from the sword and the girl still could not understand what was happening there and what was wrong with this sword. The waves began to glow stronger and at the same second a huge eye appeared from the sword in front of her and looked straight at this girl in front of him. The girl looked at this eye but did not understand why it appeared there and how it was connected with this sword and she did not know what it needed. And then the girl froze in place and as if she was under hypnosis and began to talk about the soul of blood and strength, but she did not think about these words. The girl came to her senses and thought that it was strange and how could she say these words without thinking and it looks like the sword was involved there. And at that moment sounds began to be heard from the sword and he said that they destroyed the girl's clan and should be punished for this act. The sword told its owner that they killed its master and did not spare him at all when they brazenly deprived an innocent man of his life. The sword asked its owner if she wanted to take revenge on those who were involved in this and quickly deal with these people forever. The girl cried and she felt very sorry for her master because she loved and respected him very much and did not want him to die such a death. And at that very second the girl felt enormous power and said that the master did not deserve this and she agreed with this sword. The girl told the Yao clan that she wanted them to pay for all their atrocities and said that they would soon regret this decision. At this time, Zhang Xiling was walking around these places and realized that it was already too late and he should have come a little earlier. Zhang Xiling saw the bodies of these people and realized that it seemed the battle was already over and he could not do anything or help them. Zhang Xiling sat down next to the corpse and thought who could have used the soul-devouring sword to finish off these people. Zhang Xiling saw this man's amulet and saw that it was written that he was from the Yao clan, but what kind of unknown clan was it? Zhang Xiling looked at their badge and thought that he had never seen or heard of such a clan and did not even know what this clan did. Zhang Xiling realized that there were only corpses there and he needed to see if there was anyone nearby so that he could find out information. Zhang Xiling began to walk through these places and saw that someone's clothes were lying on the ground there and he decided to take a closer look at this thing. Zhang Xiling really thought that these people next to him also left this world because of the sword of devouring souls and it seems that this is one person. Zhang Xiling picked up these clothes from the ground and thought that these clothes seemed very familiar to him and it seemed like he had seen these clothes before. Zhang Xiling looked at these clothes with interest and wondered if this was what he was thinking about and realized that this could not be. Zhang Xiling looked at these clothes and froze in place and could not believe how this was possible and how could there be such a coincidence. Zhang Xiling saw the embroidery on these clothes and thought if this was Ziyu's embroidery and he had seen and remembered this pattern of clothes before. Zhang Xiling remembered how his sister showed her brother a drawing and at that time she asked her brother if he liked her personal embroidery. The sister was glad that her brother liked her embroidery and Zhang Xiling thought what had happened to his beloved and sweet sister. Zhang Xiling thought, didn't Chen Huan say that she left with the master then, and did his friend really lie to him in the last meeting? Zhang Xiling wondered if Ziyu also participated in the battle and the soul-devouring sword poses a great danger to the spiritual flow. Zhang Xiling thought that it was an evil weapon and he realized that he had to find Ziyu or else something bad might happen to her. After this, Zhang Xiling returned to the auction house, and at this time the monk was sitting on the sofa and was in pain after interacting with the crowd. Chen Huan approached his friend and asked if he had found Ziyu's sister and asked how she was feeling and if she was okay at that time. Zhang Xiling approached the monk and said that he found this card on the field and asked the master if he knew anything about this clan. The master was surprised and said that it was a card of the Yao clan and asked Zhang if the disappearance of his sister was connected with this Yao clan. The master said that unfortunately their clan does not care at all about laws and honor, and they are famous for murders and theft of treasures. Zhang Xiling began to shake the master and asked where the people from this gang were, and the master asked the student to wait just 1 minute. The master told student Zhang that their base was located in the foothills of Mozhan on the Davan Road somewhere in the Qingdong region, and that was all. Zhang Xiling thought that his sister should hold out a little and he would soon find her and brother and sister would be together again as before. At this time, Ziyu had already reached the Yao clan and found their hideout and stood in front of the gate to this clan, and she was very angry with them. Ziyu was completely subjugated by the sword and she lost control and thought that soon this clan would disappear forever from the face of the earth. Ziyu immediately struck the door with a strong blow and smashed this door in a matter of seconds and began to move further towards these traitors. The people from the Yao clan were surprised and wondered what the noise was that they just heard and what happened at the main gate of their clan. People saw Ziyu approaching their building with a sword in her hands, and people told her to stand and did not understand who she was with the weapon. But Ziyu looked menacingly towards these people and thought that in vain they stood in her way and now they would scream in pain. And at that moment Ziyu dealt a powerful blow to these people, and she said that from the very beginning she warned everyone that it would be bad. People from the clan who were in the main building heard these sounds in the courtyard and thought that there was an intruder there now. People from the clan called all their soldiers there and ordered them to quickly get there to get rid of the arrogant person who got there. People went out into the courtyard and noticed that someone had already destroyed many buildings there and said that they were right and this was an enemy attack on them. A man from the Yao clan asked all his people to prepare for defense and said that he saw their dangerous enemy coming towards them. And at that very second, Ziyu appeared in front of the fighters and her eyes glowed red and she had one goal: to destroy everyone there. A fighter from the Yao clan said that the enemy had appeared and was now in their field of vision and ordered all the people to attack her and get rid of her. All the fighters of the Yao clan began to flee to Ziyu and wanted to destroy the enemy as quickly as possible and protect their clan from such a rival. Ziyu was not at all afraid of these fighters and she waved her sword and thought that these people seemed to underestimate her skills and power. And when Ziyu swung her sword, it became long and began to pass by the fighters because her target was another person. And at that very second the sword stuck into that man from the Yao clan who gave everyone orders and stood behind all his fighters in defense. The soldiers were shocked by this and said that their vice captain was very badly wounded and they could not understand how the enemy was able to get him out of there. The fighter asked all his people to come up to him and said that they would now avenge their vice captain and she would get what she deserved. Strong fighters of the Yao clan began to use the poison ivy technique and they wanted to punish the enemy for their loyal vice captain. The fighters began to bind Ziyu with this poison ivy and they thought that the block array they would put up should stop. Ziyu looked at how the fighters tied her up and she, without doing anything, just silently looked at them and seemed to be waiting for something at that moment. And after a couple of seconds, people from the Yao clan completely tied up the enemy and thought that the danger had been stopped and it would be defeated. And then the head of these fighters began to use the heavenly thunder technique and he accumulated a huge ball in his hand and wanted to protect his Yao clan. And at that moment, the head of the fighters directed earth and fire towards the bound enemy and thought that this would be enough to finish her off. But Ziyu was no longer there and she was already running behind the back of the head of the Yao clan fighters, and he realized that she was much stronger than they thought. The rest of the clan fighters also froze in surprise and did not understand how this was possible because they tied their enemy very tightly. And at that very second, Ziyu quickly dealt with the main fighters of the clan and took their lives, and they could not do anything to her in response. And when the fighters of the Yao clan lost their commanders, Ziyu began to very easily break all the other fighters and did not want to hesitate. Ziyu was so fast that she jumped over the heads of these fighters and in response they could not even see the trajectory of movement. Ziyu jumped high and all the people of the Yao clan froze in place and already realized that it looks like they are now doomed and nothing will save them from her. Ziyu swung and dealt a powerful blow with her sword, and she took revenge on these people for their impudent betrayal and for the master. At this time, inside the building of the Yao clan, in the room where all sorts of experiments were carried out, there was a man, and now he was conducting his experiments there. A scientist was working with the body of some monster, and he thought that he was creating something that no one could have thought that such a monster could exist. The doctor heard a noise outside the building and wondered what the hell was going on there, and couldn't the clan fighters cope with it? And then a guy ran up to him and told Elder Yao that the clan was in danger and this invasion and the students were seriously injured. Dr. Yao asked his man how the captains were, and he said that they were all dead and the enemy quickly dealt with them. Yao said that everything was clear to him and they didn't really train and dared to die in the face of the enemy like worthless fighters and warriors. Yao told the man that fortunately he was stretching his muscles and these experiments in his hands could also become a surprise for his enemies. Zhang Xiling was walking around the location at that time, and she said that after 400 meters he should turn right into this subway. Zhang Xiling jumped from the roof of the building and landed on the roof of the car, and he got ready to go to quickly find his sister. And as soon as Zhang Xiling landed on the roof of the car, a voice in the navigator asked him to fasten his seatbelts in the car for protection. Zhang Xiling thought that this navigation system was very accurate, but it was so chatty that he couldn't gather his thoughts in one place. At this time, Ziyu had already dealt with all the fighters of the Yao clan, and they could not do anything against her evil magic sword. Ziyu smashed everything around and headed to the main building to deal with all the heads who were sitting in warm places. But there was a surveillance camera on the roof of the main building of the Yao clan, and the head was already aware that Ziyu decided to go and find him. But Ziyu did not notice this camera, and the people from the Yao clan thought that it was great, and she was not aware that they were now watching her. Yao looked at Ziyu through the monitor and told her man that he would now release his experimental sample and everything was ready. Judging by the legend, Elder Yao has been living for more than 100 years and he can revive corpses using transformation using his voodoo technique. The guy thought that recently he heard that the elders went even further and began to connect them with animals, and it was interesting. The man from the Yao clan thought that he had finally received this honor to see this, and the man immediately pressed the lever on the orders of his boss. And at that very second, in front of Ziyu, someone broke the wall of the building where she was heading, and she looked there and thought what a surprise this was. And at that moment, many monsters appeared in front of her, and they all began to approach Ziyu with the intention of finishing her off forever. Ziyu was not at all afraid of even these terrible monsters and stood firmly on her feet, and when they got close to her she waved her sword. Ziyu waved her sword and kicked the hand of one of the monsters who wanted to grab her, and after a while she completely finished off this monster. Ziyu heard some sounds behind her and thought that Yao had more than one monster, and there were a lot of them, and he himself created the monsters. Ziyu saw that a huge and strong monster began to approach her, who wanted to deal with the enemy by order of the boss. The monster came close to Ziyu and wanted to hit her, and he hit and broke the ground there into pieces, and Ziyu managed to dodge the blow. This monster had steel and very sharp claws, and he decided to hit Ziyu with his claws to cause her severe pain. The monster swung and almost reached Ziyu with its claws, and at the last moment she managed to jump and protect herself from the monster's blow. The monster began to send its dangerous blue waves toward Ziyu, but she was very nimble and defended herself well from his attacks. Ziyu landed on the ground and realized that Yao had done a good job and provided this monster with many dangerous weapons for battle. Ziyu wanted to run away from the monster in the other direction, but noticed that there was a wall behind her, and that was a problem, and she began to think. The monster opened his mouth and sent the same waves at Ziyu that could cause a lot of damage, and he had a good position to attack the enemy. The monster was able to hit Ziyu with these blue waves, and she hit the wall from this attack, and she knew that this could happen soon. The monster ensured that Ziyu was in a dead end, and he jumped on her with his attack, and he thought that he would now defeat his enemy. The monster hit this Ziyu with all his might and immediately broke a huge wall into pieces and thought that he hit her and she was no longer alive. But the monster looked at the place where he struck and was surprised because he did not see Ziyu's body there and did not know where she could have gone. But at that moment, when the monster did not expect this, Ziyu suddenly jumped out from behind him and swung her sword to strike. Ziyu finished off the monster with just one swing, and her sword was a very powerful weapon that many could not handle. Yao was shocked to see what Ziyu did to his monster and immediately asked his man to knock her weapon out of this girl's hand. Yao looked at the monitor and thought, isn't this the sword that his subordinates were looking for, and it was very curious and interesting for him. Yao asked his man to go with him and said that they would release the king of parasites, and the guy agreed with his boss. They went down and the man thought about the king of parasites and he heard the legend that Yao fed him with his spiritual energy. The man heard that this energy should last for 1,000 years and this made him one of the 2 successful weapons of the elder's genius. They went down to the very bottom of the building and Yao asked his man to open the door and enter this room which was locked. A guy from the Yao clan remembered that students were forbidden to enter this area without authorization and this was considered a gross violation. A man entered this room, opened the lock and immediately realized that there was a lousy smell and he could no longer tolerate this stinking smell. The man told Boss Yao that he had found the switch and would now quickly turn on the light there because nothing was visible there and it was just darkness. And having turned on the light there, the man turned around and froze in surprise and could not believe his eyes and he could not move anywhere from there. The man looked to the side and thought that he had never seen anything like this in his life and it really scared him very much now. The man noticed that a huge insect was standing in front of him and she was making very scary sounds and noticed her easy prey. And at that moment a huge monster began to quickly move towards the guy from the clan and he realized that things were bad and he was in a trap. A huge monster stood right in front of his face and did not move for a couple of seconds, and the man thought maybe he would still be able to escape. But suddenly, immediately after these words, the monster attacked the man and he quickly ended him once and for all, and the monster was glad of this flesh. Boss Yao told his huge monster that it was just a snack for him and his real prey was waiting for him upstairs now. The huge parasite listened to its owner and he thought that upstairs he could feast on a new victim and he was waiting for this moment. The huge monster immediately broke the wall and quickly headed into the yard, and Boss Yao was very happy about this and said that this girl was already finished. At that time, Ziyu wanted to deal with the main boss who was sending his huge monsters there, but she heard sounds below. And at that moment the ground under Ziyu's foot began to break and she did not understand what was happening there and who could do this to this land. And then Ziyu noticed that someone began to appear from underground and it was of enormous proportions because it made very loud sounds. And at that very second a huge parasite appeared in front of Ziyu and immediately wanted to attack the enemy who did not want to surrender to the Yao clan. Ziyu realized that this monster was very strong and it would not be as easy with him as with the others and suddenly noticed someone's silhouette nearby. It was Boss Yao and he began to prepare his attack with his hand. He began to send different force beams towards Ziyu. Yao directed all his energy and wanted to destroy the enemy, and huge fragments of earth began to fly towards Ziyu and he thought that she was already a corpse. But Ziyu didn't care. She cut these fragments in half with her sword and she couldn't be dealt with in such an easy way. And on the other hand, the huge parasite Yao began to attack Ziyu and she realized that she needed to defend herself on both sides from enemy attacks. The huge monster wanted to hit Ziyu, but she deftly jumped and he couldn't hit her, but he smashed everything around his opponent. The huge parasite began to shoot at Ziyu with its spikes and they were very large and very sharp and could pierce anyone. But Ziyu became very strong and she simply cut these thorns with her sword and deftly evaded any dangers from both sides. A huge monster approached the enemy and wanted to hit Ziyu with its tail, but she put her hand in front of her and defended herself from his attacks. But from such a powerful blow from a huge monster, Ziyu bounced a couple of meters away from this monster and it was difficult for her to defend herself from it. And at that same second, Ziyu saw that something began to glow behind her, and at first she did not understand what kind of strange and bright glow it was. And turning around, Ziyu noticed that Boss Yao was already standing close in front of her and was swinging his magic staff to strike. Boss Yao dealt a strong blow to Ziyu and she flew far to the other side straight towards a huge monster and the boss thought that victory was close. The huge monster saw that the prey began to fly towards it and it prepared its poisonous paws to pierce its victim. The huge parasite struck with his paw, but Ziyu still managed to defend herself from his blow and put a magic sword behind her. Boss Yao realized that Ziyu was no longer as strong as before and he had to seize this chance to finish off the enemy. And at that very second, Boss Yao struck the ground with his staff and all the ground under his feet began to break everywhere in all places. Ziyu at that time was fighting with a huge monster and she cut off his vile paws and wanted to hit this monster's weak point. Ziyu did not notice how the ground collapsed under her feet and she began to fall into this abyss and could no longer stay on her feet there. Ziyu realized that she had made a mistake and now she began to think about how to get out of this situation that she found herself in because of Boss Yao. Ziyu continued to fall into this abyss and she could no longer fight this huge monster and just looked at him. And after that, the huge monster began to inject its poison on all sides and this should have been enough to finish off the girl. The huge parasite sent all its poison into this abyss where Ziyu fell and this was just the beginning and he still had a surprise for her. And after that the huge monster began to prepare his attack, smoke began to come out of his mouth and the monster had a lot of abilities. And at that moment the huge parasite began to breathe fire and began to burn everything around him and Yao was pleased with his faithful monster. Boss Yao stood next to the abyss and told Ziyu that now they would let her die without corpses and she bravely fought with everyone. And suddenly Boss Yao saw some silhouettes in this abyss and he was surprised who it could be because only one girl fell there. And then some terrible red spirits began to come out to Boss Yao and the boss did not understand where these terrible spirits came from and there were many of them. The spirits screamed non-stop and began to fly in all directions in this place and they had very scary faces and seemed to have bad intentions. Boss Yao froze in surprise and was in shock and just silently looked at these spirits who continued to fly in all directions. And after a couple of seconds the spirits noticed that Boss Yao was standing there along with his huge parasite and they began to head towards them. The red spirits wanted to grab a huge monster and the parasite could not do anything to them and was powerless against these inanimate creatures. Terrible red spirits began to direct rays towards Boss Yao and he began to run away from there to hide from these strange spirits. Boss Yao noticed that these red spirits did not touch him and flew past him and headed to attack his beloved huge parasite. Red spirits surrounded the huge monster from all sides and the monster looked very pitiful and the boss couldn't do anything about it either. The red spirits began to bite the huge monster and Boss Yao was shocked and thought what the hell it was that he couldn't explain. Boss Yao wondered if it was the power of the magic sword of that girl who fell into the abyss and they never stopped floating in the air. The red spirits began to pull out his soul from the huge monster and the monster screamed and could not do anything more and became very weak. The red monsters almost completely pulled out all his strength and energy from the huge monster and they circled above him and there were many of them. Boss Yao was angry that the attack had no effect on them and it seemed that he could only use this trick to deal with the spirits. Boss Yao started running from there and all the red spirits started chasing him and he had one interesting plan and he wanted to do it. Boss Yao moved to a free place and threw away his staff and he was carrying some strange bottle with him and the spirits began to approach. Boss Yao quickly began to open this bottle and thought that this was the only way out of this situation and the fight against these spirits. Boss Yao said that it was a spatial bottle and he gave the command to start collecting and this should help him defeat these spirits. And at that moment all the spirits began to be absorbed into this bottle and Boss Yao was very pleased and realized that his plan was 100% successful. Boss Yao smiled and was happy and said that no one had ever gotten away from his tricks so far and this time these red does will not succeed. But at that very second strange things began to happen in the abyss and on the contrary there were more of these spirits and it was very strange. Boss Yao looked at it all and couldn't understand what was happening there and it was strange because his bottle always helped him defeat the spirits. And then Ziyu jumped out of the abyss and she was completely fine and was not harmed in any way after falling and being fried by a huge monster. All the spirits began to approach their master Ziyu and they protected her in every way from all attacks and many other dangers. Ziyu looked straight into Boss Yao's eyes and smiled a nasty smile and her eyes glowed red and she was ready. Zhang Xiling finally reached this building of the Yao clan and realized that what he now saw was the breath of the Soul Eater's sword. Zhang Xiling realized that the sword devouring souls was inside this building and he must hurry to save his sister. Zhang Xiling immediately jumped high and found himself inside the Yao clan building and wanted to see what happened there in his absence. Zhang Xiling looked down and wondered if this was it, because he didn't expect to see this magic sword in the hands of this loved one. Zhang Xiling watched and his sister Ziyu stood next to the dead huge monster and many red spirits were circling next to her. Zhang Xiling wondered if the sword of devouring souls was in the hands of his sister and why this evil sword went to his sister. And at that very second, Zhang Xiling realized that his sister Ziyu was already under the influence of the sword and this was very bad news. Ziyu at that moment stood in front of Boss Yao and wanted to teach him a lesson for what he did to her, and now he will definitely go to the next world. Ziyu decided to start her attack and she rushed towards Boss Yao, and the red spirits were helping next to her and they all wanted to hit him. But Boss Yao was ready for their attack and, on the contrary, he waited for their approach to open his bottle and get rid of these problems forever. Zhang Xiling rushed towards his sister and thought that if nothing happened to Ziyu, he would destroy this bad and stupid sword. And when Ziyu came closer to Boss Yao, he immediately opened the bottle and said that now she would go to hell along with the 7 spirits. Boss Yao said that he was starting to collect, and at that very second all the spirits began to be absorbed by this bottle and they could not fly anywhere from there. Ziyu just wanted to hit the vile traitor Yao so that this vile smile would disappear from his face and she would avenge the master. But Ziyu also began to be sucked into this bottle and she stuck her sword into the ground and began to try to hold on to it with all her might. Ziyu continued to hold on to the sword and realized that Yao is a very cunning person, and all this time he was just waiting for her to attack him. But the sword could not withstand Ziyu's body for long and she flew towards this side of the bottle where all the spirits were sucked in and nothing could be done. Ziyu also began to absorb into this bottle and Zhang Xiling moved with all his might towards his sister to help her get out of this situation. Zhang Xiling said that he just didn't want this and he couldn't allow his sister to be carried into this bottle with other perfumes. Ziyu saw her brother and thought that this couldn't be, and was it really not a dream and was happening in reality, and couldn't believe her eyes. A tear came from Ziyu's eyes and she wondered if this was her beloved brother Zhang Xiling, and she had missed him very much over all the years. Zhang Xiling wanted to grab his sister's hand and not let her fall into this bottle because she should return to him and live in warmth and comfort. Ziyu reached out with her hand to her brother and the bottle began to close and she realized that her brother would not have time to help her, and that was the end. Ziyu found herself in some place where there was nothing and there was only emptiness around her, and she began to fall asleep in this strange place. Ziyu lost consciousness, but she reached out to her brother until the last moment and wanted to touch his hand because she had not seen him for so many years. Zhang Xiling also reached out with all his might to his sister's hand, but he did not have time to save her and she disappeared from this world and simply evaporated. Zhang Xiling was very angry at Boss Yao and clenched his fist and began to prepare his strong blow to this scoundrel who hurt Z. Boss Yao was very happy at this time and said that in less than 2 hours the sword would be in his hands, and then he closed the bottle. Zhang Xiling dealt a powerful blow to Boss Yao and broke all the ground under his feet into pieces because he used a strong technique. Boss Yao flew to the side, but he held the bottle in his hand and realized that this man was also very strong and his blow could break the stones. It became very dusty everywhere and Boss Yao noticed the silhouette of brother Ziyu who was standing right in front of him and wanted to ask him a couple of questions. Zhang Xiling called Boss Yao a bastard and asked why he did it because everything could have been resolved peacefully without these battles. Zhang Xiling shouted at Boss Yao and told him to release his sister from the bottle because it was all the fault of that damned sword. Zhang Xiling stood and waited for an answer to his request, but Boss Yao just looked at him and remained silent without answering his questions and was waiting for something. Yao asked Zhang Xiling where it came from and said that it would overload if it ate something else because the bottle was almost full. Zhang Xiling asked Boss Yao if he really wanted to die, and if he wanted this, then he could easily fulfill his request. And after these words, Zhang Xiling began to glow with a bright light and Yao covered his eyes because it was a blinding brightness from the guy. Boss Yao thought what a powerful spiritual power this person had who came there with evil intentions, and it was very powerful. Boss Yao didn't have time to finish speaking when he saw that Zhang Xiling had already disappeared from that place and was already flying at high speed straight towards him. Zhang Xiling could not be stopped because he was very angry with Yao and wanted to teach him a lesson for all his evil intentions and deeds. And at that very second, Zhang Xiling landed right at Boss Yao and there was a huge roar all around and it was a devastating blow. Zhang Xiling stood over Boss Yao and pressed his foot against his hand where he was holding the bottle, and Yao began to scream from the pain in his hand. But Zhang Xiling did not want to give mercy to such a cruel villain and began to squeeze his hand even more tightly, and the pain was unbearable. But Boss Yao was very cunning and he used the corrosive toxins technique and released green substances and green smoke from his mouth at Zhang. Zhang Xiling suffered from such toxins and he stopped squeezing Yao's hand and began to defend himself from these poisonous toxins of the villain Yao. Boss Yao quickly stood up and took his bottle from the ground and thought that he needed to quickly run away from there because Zhang was stronger than him. Boss Yao started to run away from there and told Zhang Xiling that he couldn't die like that and he would come back and remind him of this later. But suddenly Zhang Xiling appeared right in front of him and grabbed his hand so tightly and did not let him escape anywhere from this place. Zhang Xiling looked at Yao menacingly and thought that this scoundrel would not be able to escape from there until he himself allowed him to do so. Zhang Xiling used technique and strength and in a second deprived Boss Yao of his hand and his hand flew a couple of meters away from this place. Boss Yao was in great pain and he asked to have mercy and let him go and he would never harm his family and friends again. But Zhang Xiling did not listen to Boss Yao's words and did not let him go, and at that moment he prepared to strike with a technique to finish him off. And at that very second, Zhang Xiling delivered a powerful blow with his technique and seriously injured Boss Yao so that he could no longer stand up and fight with him. After that, Zhang Xiling took the bottle in his hands and began to think about how he would free his sister from this very strange and magical bottle. Zhang Xiling asked his sister not to rush and said that soon he would release her from this bottle and they would go to his home together. Zhang Xiling couldn't open this bottle and wondered why it wouldn't open and how this was possible and is it really magic? Boss Yao laughed at Zhang Xiling's words and said, "Is he really asking him about this and doesn't know how to open the ancient bottle?" Boss Yao said that this is a spiritual bottle and Zhang will never open it and in 2 hours his sister's body will completely disappear forever. Zhang Xiling kicked Boss Yao and told him to talk about how to open this bottle, otherwise he would be in great pain and die. But Zhang Xiling looked at Boss Yao and realized that he had already died and therefore did not answer his questions and he could not now find the answers. Zhang Xiling looked at the dead Boss Yao and thought that it was bad and he didn't know how to free his sister from the bottle and save her. Zhang Xiling got angry at this and began to hit the ground with all his might and now he had a new problem that he did not expect. Zhang Xiling wanted to open this bottle with his own power, but he couldn't do it and he screamed with rage and was simply powerless there. Zhang Xiling did not believe that it could not be opened even with the help of his 1,000-year-old cultivation base and how was it possible? Zhang Xiling did not know what to do, but then he realized that then he could use his mind and this was also his strong weapon. Zhang Xiling began to rotate the lid of the bottle and now he was able to open this bottle and it was easier for him to do it. And at that very second, Zhang Xiling opened the bottle and released everything that Yao had kept in this bottle all this time and was happy about it. Zhang Xiling looked at the bottle and thought why he didn't see his sister there and where could she have gone because Yao said that she was there. Zhang Xiling thought how this was possible because he did not feel the presence of the sword there and did not understand how this bottle worked and where Ziyu was. Zhang Xiling stood in bewilderment and wondered where his sister ended up and how he could get her out and who could help him with this issue. Zhang Xiling was angry with himself and thought that he was to blame for all this and he needed to get there early and he would have saved his sister. Zhang Xiling began to scream at the top of his voice and asked how this could happen and why it happened to his dear sister. At this time, an alarm was announced in the Dragon Control Base and they noticed that something very interesting had recently happened. People were shocked and said that they never expected that such a thing could be discovered at such a time, which was very rare. People said that a huge leap in spiritual power had been discovered, but of an unknown nature, and so far it was very difficult to talk about it. All the people could not believe their eyes and looked at the monitor and thought that this was a huge jump and what could cause it now. But then a man appeared in front of them and asked them what the situation was now and whether they needed to intervene in these matters if they continued. Everyone looked at this man with surprise and thought that he would not appear there, but it seemed that the matter was serious and he himself came there. The girl told Captain Bai Long that a huge surge of spiritual power of an unknown nature was discovered in the eastern region. The girl told Captain Bai Long that the satellites were immediately used for filming and the photos were there in 10 seconds. Captain Bai Long wondered if this clan of demons had brought them trouble again and they always did this and were already very tired of him. And then a picture appeared on the monitor and people reported that the signal had appeared again and he could see what was happening there at that time. Captain Bai Long thought, "Isn't this the management of the Yao clan?" and ordered the girl next to him to immediately contact Master Yao now. Bai Long asked to immediately use the cameras and deal with this situation and send a command to block this field. Bai Long asked the technical department to contact the press to prevent information leakage and panic among people. Captain Bai Long asked to immediately inform him as soon as they found the suspect, and the people agreed with their captain. The worker told his sister that he had always wondered why the cultivation world had to be hidden from mortals and what the problem was. The sister called the worker a stupid newbie and said that in the world of cultivation there are many dangerous and difficult factors for all people. The girl said that opening it to everyone would lead to chaos on a global scale, and therefore she asked him not to think about it. And after a couple of minutes, the girl approached Captain Bai Long and he immediately asked if something from the Yao clan had appeared and he wanted to find out everything. The girl said that the Yao clan said that they do not know anything about this and they are conducting their own investigation and asked not to interfere. The girl said that Master Ming Long asked Bai Long to come and it seems that he has a prediction and Bai asked to keep him informed. At this time, the man was sitting on a chair and looking at many planets in the solar system and admiring this beautiful view of space. And at that very second, Captain Bai Long approached him and told Master Ming Long that he had just been informed that he wanted to see him. Captain Bai Long asked Ming Long what he saw in his dream and whether it was a threat to their mission and asked him to tell about it quickly. Min Long said that he felt like a sick and lost soul was sinking deeper and deeper into eternal emptiness and it was very sad. Min Long told Captain Bai Long that once he got there he would never be able to come back and that was a big problem. And then suddenly Min Long said that a new demon was coming and it looked like it was a demonic dance and they needed to be careful and they were dangerous. Ming Long felt that it was a very evil energy and everything in this room became foggy and Ming Long stopped talking about them. Captain Bai Long heard about the demons and asked Ming Long if they would appear in their world again and they need to be prepared for the demons. But when Captain Bai Long did not expect this at all, Min Long said that this man was a strange man and he clearly saw him. Captain Bai Long was very surprised and thought about which man Min Long was referring to and maybe he was mistaken, although he was never mistaken. And at that moment Captain Bai Long's phone rang and he realized that his assistant was calling him and it seemed they had information from there. The girl called him on a video call and told Captain Bai Long that they had found the reason for the jump and he might be surprised by this guy. The girl showed her captain a photo of the culprit of this jump and there was a photo of Zhang Xiling, but they did not know his biography. Ming Long asked Captain Bai Long to bring this person there but the captain said that the identity of the other party has not yet been established. Ming told Captain Bai Long that he had a premonition that this particular person was connected with the prophecy and he wanted to see him quickly. Captain Bai Long told Ming Long that he would check it out and soon he would give him information about this matter and began to leave from there. Finally, Min Long quietly said that perhaps it was so, because he could have messed something up and maybe this person is not connected with the prophecy. Captain Bai Long approached the girl and said that he would personally lead the team and they needed to find this man and talk to him personally. The girl said that she understood him and she would immediately collect everything and contact Elder Wei so that he would also know about this news. Captain Bai Long said that he had not fought with someone for a very long time and wanted to see how unusual he was and asked not to let him down. After some time, a helicopter with their team arrived in the Ring Highway and they informed Captain Bai Long that they were looking for a man. And after a couple of minutes, the people informed Captain Bai Long that they had already discovered the target and were waiting for further instructions from Captain Bai. The target was running somewhere at high speed and it was very difficult to notice him in these places and they did not know where he was moving now. Captain Bai Long told his men that he understood them and asked them to pick him up in 10 minutes and he would personally deal with it. Captain Bai Long immediately jumped from there and headed in the direction where Zhang Xiling is now to meet the culprit there. People thought about 10 minutes and said that their captain was so modest and asked how long he thought this guy would last. His friend said that he thinks that he will hold out for 2 minutes and who cares about their captain, because Captain Bai Long is the best in the millennium. And after a couple of seconds, Bai Long jumped down and met Zhang Xiling and asked him to wait a couple of minutes and listen to his words. Captain Bai Long said that he is from the Dragon Control and at the moment only wants to talk with him about recent events in the clan. But Zhang Xiling did not pay attention to Captain Bai Long at all and continued to run in his direction without stopping. Captain Bai Long was very angry with Zhang Xiling and told him that he was not finished yet and where did he run without listening to his words. Bai Long began to use his technique and created a sharp spear in his hand and thought that this should stop this impudent scoundrel. Captain Bai Long swung and threw this spear straight at Zhang Xiling with all his might and thought that this should be enough to stop him. But Zhang Xiling managed to dodge his spear and saved his own life thanks to his reaction and the fact that he was a very fast fighter. Zhang Xiling told Captain Bai Long that he did not know any dragon control and said that he had an emergency. Captain Bai Long asked him why he didn't know about them and said that their government is a shield for this country and a system for regulating the world. But Zhang Xiling again did not listen to the captain's words and continued running in some direction, and Bai Long froze in place in surprise. Captain Bai Long got angry and told Zhang Xiling that he seemed to be refusing to obediently go with him to their base. Captain Bai Long began to attack Zhang Xiling and asked him to show him what he could do, and he was interested in knowing his abilities. Captain Bai Long began to throw hundreds of sharp swords at Zhang Xiling and thought that his attacks were difficult to defend against, and that was a fact. But Zhang Xiling put up a protective barrier in front of him and all of Captain Bai Long's swords were stopped and did not reach their target. Zhang Xiling started yelling at Captain Bai Long and said that he was in a bad mood and didn't want to fight them today. But at this moment, Captain Bai Long appeared behind Zhang Xiling and swung his sword and wanted to strike the final blow at him. Captain Bai Long hit his opponent with all his might and did not even listen to his words and said that his words were useless now. But Captain Bai Long looked at Zhang Xiling and thought, how is this even possible, and he could not believe what was happening there. Captain Bai Long looked at Zhang Xiling and said that he could not hurt him and all his attacks were useless against this fighter. Zhang Xiling immediately grabbed Captain Bai Long by the throat, and the captain thought what kind of powerful spiritual force this was and who this person was. And at that very second, Zhang Xiling stuck Captain Bai Long on the ground with all his might, and he could not answer him with anything and was simply powerless. Zhang Xiling said that he warned them not to interfere with him, but they continue to get under his feet and he has things to do. Zhang Xiling swung and hit Captain Bai Long with all his might and hoped that these people would now leave him behind and not interfere. Zhang Xiling delivered a powerful blow with his technique and told Captain Bai Long not to interfere with his personal plans anymore. Captain Bai Long lay on the ground and could not move and thought how this could happen because he was confident in his strength and power. The people behind the monitor couldn't believe if their Captain Bai Long lost in 2 minutes because he was one of the 10 best there. But Bai Long stood up and said that he had not lost yet and he could not lose his face and therefore he needed to respond with his attack. And then Captain Bai Long began to use the strongest flow technique and thought that Zhang Xiling would now regret his impudence. Captain Bai Long created a huge dragon and ordered Zhang Xiling to watch his movement, and the dragon had already reached behind him. At this time, the driver was driving along the road and driving a truck and thought that this was a very calm road and he would soon get to his place. And then the driver noticed that Zhang Xiling was running in front of him and realized that this was very strange, and who was this man running at night? The driver said that it was not normal to run along the road late at night, and what was this man even thinking about, and was he not sitting at home? But the driver noticed something strange and froze in surprise and did not understand what it was, but he knew that it was not an ordinary person. The driver looked at Zhang Xiling and the dragon behind him and he did not believe his eyes and said that he met a deity on the road. Zhang Xiling also saw this huge truck and thought that a dragon was flying at him on one side and a huge car on the other side. At this time, at the Dragon Control headquarters, Mr. Wei couldn't believe that Yao Medical Center had been destroyed by this guy. Mr. Wei recognized Zhang Xiling as the elder's disciple, and was he really that strong, and these were his real skills and he was a monster. The girl said that undoubtedly it was him, but he was nowhere near their Captain Bai Long and thought that Wei looked somehow younger. Wei didn't know that Zhang was such a talent and Yao's medical center was bad and dirty, and he is also a member of the Jia Zhao Dragon team. Wei needed to rethink everything and he asked the girl to find a way to fix the situation in Yaozong and he would deal with him. The girl agreed with Wei but said that now she had received new information, and when she opened the message she did not believe it. The girl told Wei that it was impossible and Captain Bai Long was defeated by this dangerous stranger who escaped from there. Wei ordered to stop the operation and recall everyone, and their priority is the safety of Captain Bai Long and he will deal with the guy himself. And at that moment Bei called someone on the phone and said that he was informing Bai Bao Tong and they were going there right now. At this time, in the Bai Bao Tong hall, Mr. Wei had already quickly arrived at this place and was waiting there for Zhang Xiling with his men to talk. And Mr. Wei's people noticed that Zhang Xiling began to approach behind him and he ran at a very high speed and did not stand. The man reported this to Mr. Wei and told the boss that their target was already approaching them and he was running at great speed towards them. And then Mr. Wei got out of the car and stood in front of Zhang Xiling and asked if he could have a minute of his time and wanted to tell him something. Zhang Xiling wondered if Mr. Wei was the man who bought the Ji Yuan pill about the auction house and what did he want from him. Zhang Xiling wanted to continue on his way and he didn't want to listen to Mr. Wei's words about how bad he was or that he needed to cool down. Mr. Wei asked Zhang Xiling if he wasn't interested in learning the secrets of the spatial bottle and could tell a lot of facts. Zhang Xiling immediately stopped and wondered if Mr. Wei knew how to open this bottle and how did he know that he had it now. Zhang Xiling turned around and threateningly asked the mortal Mr. Wei to say that he knows about the bottle, otherwise this life will be his last. Mr. Wei froze in surprise, and his guards could not do anything with Zhang Xiling and felt some pain on their bodies. Zhang Xiling began to slowly approach Mr. Wei and they all asked him to stand and wait until he knew all the information. Mr. Wei told Zhang Xiling that they are not his enemies and asked him to calm down and talk without sudden movements and he is not dangerous. Zhang Xiling came close to Mr. Wei and he told the guy that he was there to help him and they would not harm him in any way. Zhang Xiling asked Mr. Wei to tell him how he could help him and he hoped that he would really help bring back his sister. Mr. Wei said that this bottle is a killing artifact of the Yaozong clan and someone from the Dragon Association knows how to open this bottle. Zhang Xiling asked Mr. Wei to destroy his curiosity and answer why this organization attacked him and what they needed. Mr. Wei said that it was a mistake and he should not worry and as long as he is with him he will answer all his questions without any problems. Zhang Xiling told Mr. Wei that he would believe him and wanted to find out as much information as possible about this strange artifact. Mr. Wei asked Zhang Xiling to get into the car and said that he would explain everything to him on the way and they quickly drove away from there together. But at that moment some guy was watching them and called on the phone and said that they had just seen that person. They said that he was with people from the Dragon Control and asked what to do next and what to do next. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiling and Mr. Wei arrived at the place and Mr. Wei asked him to pass and said that he would come soon. Zhang Xiling agreed with Mr. Wei and entered this room where, according to Mr. Wei, an interesting person was waiting for him. But then a girl ran up to Mr. Wei and said that things were bad and the Yaozong clan was there and they were looking for someone in this building. Mr. Wei wondered if they had already arrived there and if the information had leaked out so quickly and how it happened. Mr. Wei asked them not to panic and said that he was still there to meet these clan people in person. And at that moment a man came up to him and, lighting a cigarette, said that he heard how he brought someone to this headquarters. This man asked Mr. Wei to give it to them and they had some unresolved issues and he wanted to meet him. Mr. Wei thought that this was an old disciple from the Supreme Alliance and he personally came there and it was very bad for them. Mr. Wei told the man that he had not seen him for a long time and asked how the Supreme Alliance was doing and what news. The man said that the medical center is part of their family and now their boss's brother is dead and told him to bring this bastard back so he can die. Mr. Wei said that young people are so impulsive these days and according to tradition, you should first sit down and talk. The man said that he didn't care about his traditions and does he really want to give him orders as if he were some kind of soldier of his? The man told Mr. Wei that times had changed and told him to go home and play with his own grandchildren. Mr. Wei said that this is very arrogant and he will now get this young impudent man to respect his elders. The man said that he wanted to see what kind of retribution he was talking about and he wanted to know how he wanted to defeat him now. The man said that the only one who could stop him was Captain Bai Long but now he was completely unconscious. The man began to approach Mr. Wei and said that now he will feel how strong the young martial artists are. The man ordered Mr. Wei to start the attack and said that nothing would stop him there and he was much stronger than the old man. Mr. Wei closed his eyes and realized that it looked like this student was going to finish him off because he was really much stronger than him. But at that moment, someone directed all their power at this student and he was surprised by this attack because he did not expect this now.